I don't think it liked what Bill Maher and Charlie Kirk started talking about. So we're gonna go ahead and I'm going to run that back a little bit for you guys because I'm pretty sure I know where the live stream went a little haywire. Right about around here, so 40-minute mark. Again, we're at 1 hour 37 and 37, but around the 40-minute mark is where they start to get in depth about God and other things like that. Hold on one second, guys. Let me pull this up.
You'll still live the life you chose.
Because this is all things Charlie, so I'm gonna make sure I have all of the best of these things pulled up for us tonight. But yeah, I don't like that YouTube did that and it just started to go haywire like that. But we're back. I literally started the live stream right back up. So we're going to jump right back into all things Charlie. Bill Maher, Charlie Kirk interview. This interview took place about 4 months ago. We actually did react to it on the live stream 4 months ago. But because since today we are doing all things Charlie, we're jumping back in. Here we go.
Part of their mind must know is not true. That's the question I'm going for in religion. And like, you're obviously a super smart guy.
And respectfully, go ahead, sure.
And again, I don't want to insult you on that. I appreciate you saying that.
No, I mean, Bill, have you seen me go to college campuses? There's nothing that
right,
can fit.
But you understand my question,
and
right?
Interestingly, ironically, I have the same struggle. I don't know how somebody as intelligent as you, and I'm not trying to offend you,
You cannot believe in a virgin birth?
Time out, hold on. All of that takes faith, I acknowledge, but that all of the fine-tuning of our universe, if any of those fine-tunings were off, a famous scientist...
Some of them are off.
A famous scientist said, to believe that the universe and the earth in its current composition was an act of randomness would believe that a hurricane would go through a junkyard and assemble a 737 flight-ready Boeing.
He's wrong.
Okay, that's fine, but there are so many fine-tuning aspects to our existence that I think defy the idea that this is all randomness and all chance. Now,
that's not logical. You're saying because I don't know the answer, I'm going to assume the answer must be that a divine intervention did it. That's not really a scientific way of looking at it.
The teleological view, not the cosmological view, is that all of these fine-tunings, when layered up one after the other, it defies, I think, reason to think that this is just a roll of the dice. That when you see a baby come into the world, when you see how we naturally heal, even consciousness itself, I think, is a pretty miraculous thing. To think that's all just a bunch of happy accidents, I think it's more rational to think that that's a byproduct of design.
You're saying some prime mover made it so these things happen. I would say if a prime mover could do that, why don't skip all the suffering and why don't you just get us to where we're the perfect thing? Why you need things, I don't know, but okay, the perfect being right away. We're somehow on this journey to being, completely immortal and healthy, I guess, and completely moral and don't fuck each other up and don't have sex with children and all the bad things
all
we
the
do.
Evil of our world.
Yeah, all the evil and the Holocaust. And why go through all that if you are a prime mover? I assume that means you can do anything and just get us right to the end and then we can just, why? Just a bunch of us walking around being perfect? I mean, why is that interesting to a God? The whole thing just don't make sense.
So that's a separate question, though, of whether or not there is something behind our existence. So we believe that the universe started with a Big Bang. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, but that's not the beginning of things. That's just the beginning of what the known universe is. The big question is what was before that.
And we believe it's a being, a God. That's a constant.
And look, the misnomer about atheism is that we say, oh, there's no God. No, we just say we don't know. As Richard Dawkins always says, there's theism, which is belief in gods, and they used to believe in many, and then it got to one, and we just believe in one less. So there's just not
How would you differentiate that from agnosticism?
There isn't.
Okay.
That's another thing that's bullshit.
No, I'm just asking. It's a good faith question.
No, I think a lot of atheists think that. A lot of people on my team with this, they have that view that, don't split hairs with the atheists and the agnostics. It's like, we're on some part of, I don't know, and I'll never know, so I really don't think about it a lot. I don't get up for church. I try to be a good person because I just think intrinsically it's good for society. It's good for me to be a good person as much as I can. And I don't need the threat of the pitchfork in the ass to do it.
Can I ask a question? So how oh, but you even acknowledge though that some people act better if they feel as if they'll be judged eternally.
Totally.
Okay, no, that's a big admission. But
yes.
How do you think society best determines what is good?
That's a great question. I mean, isn't that what government is always wrestling with? What makes society good?
Do you think, even as an atheist, the Ten Commandments, the right side of the Ten Commandments is a good place to start?
Right side.
Well, because the left side, I think you have a big problem, right?
I have a problem with 8 of the 10 because only 2 of them are laws.
You got a problem with 8 of the 10?
2 of them are laws. Only 2.
What do you mean?
Don't kill.
And don't steal. Okay.
And don't steal.
Sure.
Like, I mean, this idea that God is...
But you're good with those 2.
Like, the first 4 are just jealous God shit. It's just like, you know what?
No,
God,
honoring your parents
like,
is not jealous God stuff.
God's like a pimp who's in the next room and he's like, who you on the phone with there, girl? You know, I guess I'm testing that.
Hold on, but no, it's, again, I'm not offendable on this, but I think you could, I know you made fun of it religious, but there's something beautiful about not working for a day.
Oh,
Like honoring the Sabbath.
A week is even better.
But
the Sabbath. No, I mean the Sabbath
but
is
slowing down and saying that we're not going to toil for a day.
But why would you need a religion to get to that? Why would you need a religion to, hey, let's not kill each other and take a day off? Like, I don't need a threat or a carrot for that. It's just so intrinsic. It sort of reminds me of the beginning of the Declaration of Independence.
If it's intrinsic, then why is it that a lot of countries that don't have Christianity struggle to come to these realizations? That, for example, communist China. We're going to no Hitler analogies, right? Under Mao, which was resolutely atheist, right?
Resolutely.
Yeah, I mean.
Well, no, I did a monologue in Religulous.
They might have Confucianism underlying it.
I did a monologue in Religulous about that very subject, which is the people who say, "Oh, Bill, these atheistic societies like North Korea," and no, those kind of societies, they just replaced the leader of the country for a god. They are not atheistic. When you look at what the North Korean people believe about Kim Jong-un.
It's a deification.
It's
I completely
the same shit that when he was born, winter turned to spring. He'll
be immortal in the heaven.
The first time he played golf, he got 11 holes in one. He invented the hamburger.
That's more improbable than a virgin birth.
It is. It really is.
So we agree.
I'm not making this up, but they believe that. So don't tell me North Korea is atheistic. They're not atheistic.
But there is in China at least, and of course in the Soviet Union, there was a anti-Christian movement, very hard.
Very hard.
Okay, so I guess what code, and I'm not saying this sarcastically, what book do you think is best for humanity to live by? I say the Bible. What would you say?
This is Wix Studio, built to meet any brief. When your project calls for bold creativity, design freely on Figma and seamlessly move to Studio, where your vision takes shape. Wix Studio, built for the way you create.
Don't say Dr. Seuss, Bill.
Wawa's newest $6 meal deal is here, and it's so you. The sandwich you crave.
No, it's important philosophical
Yeah, I
question.
thought it was a good question. I'm gonna go
Not the Bible.
back a little bit.
There was a anti-Christian movement, very hard.
Very hard.
Okay, so I guess what code, and I'm not saying this sarcastically, what book do you think is best for humanity to live by? I say the Bible. What would you say? No, it's an important philosophical question.
I have a book called Not the Bible. I'm not
I
kidding.
knew you was
So
gonna
not
say
loving
that.
your neighbor and not helping.
No.
There's a lot of good stuff.
Okay, but again,
Let me tell you why I'm asking.
you're cherry picking.
Come
on, Charlie.
The story of the
Charlie,
Bible is
you
one
know-
of love and redemption. There's a lot in the Bible. It is. It's a story of love.
The Old Testament?
Well, the entire arc of the Bible is a story of love and a need for humans' redemption.
Well, that's a charitable way of looking at it, and that's in there. There's a lot of things in there because it's a giant anthology over centuries of many different writers.
There is a lot in the Bible.
It wasn't written by God, right?
There's a book of the Bible I think you'd love.
What?
Song of Solomon.
Song of Solomon. Crosby, Stills, and Nash?
Song of Solomon's all about sex.
I know. It is?
Yeah.
Quote it.
Can't. It's not appropriate. No.
What?
No. It's
Too dirty for a podcast?
No, it literally is about how a husband and wife can grow intimate to one another, and there's.
Can you tell me that? Can you give me the cheat sheet on that one?
Oh, I'm telling you, the Bible has wisdom in ways you might never imagine, Bill. But no, what I'm getting at though is that this is not a gotcha or sarcasm. I mean this, humanity will seek to find a book. They'll seek to find a code to live by.
Well, okay,
and I think it's incumbent on atheists to tell us what that should be.
I agree with the first part of that. Humanity will seek to find.
Seek to know, that's Aristotle's first.
Well, seek to find something that mollifies their feelings. That's different than knowing. No, they don't really care about knowing. They care about mollifying their feelings. I feel empty. What will make me feel better? This book that purports to have answers it couldn't possibly have. But it does make me feel better because now I don't have to wonder about things that are very problematic to worry about. Like, how did I get here and what does it all mean? And why do, kids get fucking cancer when they're 2 for no reason?
I don't have an answer.
I know, I'm just saying.
And I acknowledge
this book has the answer to that question. Don't ask. Okay? Don't ask A, and B, God works in mysterious ways, and that's the end of it. Go to your room.
I think it's a little deeper than that, but it is. I mean, it is deeper. Of course, it's that, hey, why are we here? Why were we created? But fair enough. I do want to know though, but what?
I don't got it for you. We don't have it, and we don't claim to have it.
But that's a big problem though. And let me pause, because the Bible was the document, and as you acknowledged, that our founders read and believed, that built this beautiful society that you and I both love. And I think it's treading on dangerous if we want to cut our roots without an alternative, because if we cut our roots, then we get all this other counterfeit stuff of wokeism and all this postmodernist garbage. So our contention is, let's go back to where we came from.
You know who Eugene O'Neill is? No? Eugene O'Neill?
No.
Oh, wow. Kids today. A giant of American literature, theater. A Long Day's Journey into Night. Have you heard of that play? Never heard of A Long Day's Journey into Night? You kids, what are they doing with you in school?
I never went to college, Bill. This is the problem.
Okay. Anyway, he once said, I find a life with illusions unpardonable, and a life without illusions unbearable. And that's the essence of where we are. You choose the second, I choose the first. I find a life with illusions unpardonable. I just can't do it, okay? And you find a life without illusions unbearable. And the fact that we can, I think, come to this moment where we go, okay, that's you, type A, I'm type B, and still be friends. To me, this is the future of where this country has to go.
And nothing you have said has offended me in the slightest.
And I appreciate that. And I appreciate that. Because, again, that was my question in Religulous. How can otherwise really super smart people, but this is the answer. Can
I interrupt? Do you doubt those of us that have had religious experiences? Do you think it's just like neurological phenomenon?
How would you define it?
If I say that Jesus changed my life and it's gone to work in my soul.
Okay, but was he did he jump in the car with you at the drive-thru?
No,
okay.
It's
when you said a religious experience, I have to ask how much that is.
There was a moment where I realized that I'm not all that I would ever want to be, that I fall short of the glory of God's wish. And
when was this?
When I was in 5th grade, actually.
5th grade?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. That's when I gave my life to the Lord.
You were thinking about this shit in 5th grade?
Amazingly. I went to Christian school,
So you don't see that as indoctrination?
Well, I actually went to a private school previously, but they didn't force it on us, to their credit.
No, but you said you were in a Christian school.
Yeah.
Okay, you're 10. you're in a Christian school. There's no connection of like maybe at a very early age they put a chip in your brain.
I mean, I still had to make the decision for myself.
I-
And there's a lot of kids that went to that school that aren't Christians anymore, and so
By the way, I went to Catholic. I was raised Catholic.
didn't stick.
I had the opposite reaction to catechism, which was religious training we would go to on Sunday morning, where you would learn how to be a good Catholic. And it just really turned me off to the whole...
Was it too forceful, too legalistic, like all of it?
It was just a giant... I mean, I was used to a room with 20 kids in it at regular school. And then on Sunday, there's like 60 kids, and they're from different schools. And it's just like, and the nuns were like mean, because you got 60 kids and you don't really know, you have to like, and of course they're mean to begin with, to like get them in order. And they scared you, and they yelled at you, and they hit you with a ruler on the knuckles. I'm from that era where they still like fucking hit you on the...
You know how often I hear the rulers from like
I mean,
scorned Catholics? The ruler is like a very common thing.
Again, the idea that you keep people in line, it's by fear. That's why you're keeping people in line. And that's a question an atheist really, I think, is due to ask a religious person. Do you really think fear is the best way for us to grow and become good people? Because if that's how we're doing it, I do have a problem with the methodology, even if I believed in the religion.
I hear that from a lot of people that were raised Catholic, and no, I do.
SoberLink helped me provide accountability. There's the ability to provide loved ones and your job with active reports while you're doing it. With my legal troubles, I was on the verge of losing my job.
True about the Catholic
I'm
thing.
sorry.
No, you're right.
I didn't mean to,
No.
did I do an exorcism or something?
Trust
It's
me,
just like,
trust me. We have a whole highlight reel of spit takes. It's the highlight of any show. If the guest doesn't
if I can make Bill Maher laugh,
if the
okay.
guest doesn't make me do a spit take, we consider this a failure. But you did, so go on. But yes, Catholics. Yes, that's exactly who you would hear that from.
It's an under-emphasis on grace. And
Grace.
yeah.
What is grace? It's such a vague term.
So justice is getting what you deserve. Which we
personally?
Yeah, we believe all humanity deserves damnation and judgment. Tough stuff. And it started in the garden. Stuff.
The garden. Oh, you believe in the garden? Mm-hmm. You believe in the Old Testament?
Oh yeah, no, I'm one of those Christians.
Like 6,000 years old thing.
Not necessarily.
Because in religious, I went to see the...
I'm not necessarily.
I went to see the museum, the museum that they have in...
Oh yeah, Ken Hamsfield.
Ken Ham, yes, and we interviewed Ken. He was not happy.
You gotta admit, the Ark is pretty impressive. You seen the Ark? They built a whole Ark there.
We were there for a whole day.
I don't know, can't remember if it was before or after the Ark.
No, it was. And Jesus...
That's impressive, come on.
And Jesus riding the dinosaur.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Jesus riding the dinosaur. Do I really need to elaborate, people? Okay, go ahead with your thing.
Judgment is getting what you deserve. Mercy is getting less what you deserve. Grace...
Wait. Mercy is getting less than what you...
Yeah, so we believe Jesus gives us grace. So you get a prison sentence, you get judgment. You get mercy, you get less of a prison sentence. Grace would be Jesus serving that prison sentence for you so you could live life eternal.
Well, how is he serving that? Oh, you mean like in the big picture?
Well, because we believe him living a perfect life and then suffering the death that he did on the cross was him atoning for our sins.
Of course.
The sins of humanity.
Jesus, yeah.
Which is a big claim, albeit, and a very compelling one, which we also believe one to be true, because it redeems all of humanity of our shortfalling of the glory of God.
I gotta say, it's really picking up the check for the whole table. I mean, you gotta give it to your boy for like all of our sins. Well, it's a very generous thing.
But what it does
very
is
generous.
It is at its core a statement of human equality, that we're all sinners, we're all screwed up, we all got problems, we all got vices, and like no matter what you do, we all fall short of God's standard, and Jesus makes us whole.
But how do you think this view of life reflects your politics, and how much should it? And how much does it?
So,
look at me, big pothead just turned into a real interviewer.
I love it. It's a Larry King coming full circle here. You and I both agree it's very difficult to have separation of morality and state.
Correct.
So my morals come from the Bible,
Right.
and that definitely influences my public policy decisions.
Mine come from Playboy After Dark. Is that a problem?
It's a little bit different than, let's just say, the Book of Deuteronomy.
I'm just. Oh, well, that's full of crazy shit.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The Book of Deuteronomy.
Well, there's some good
That's
stuff
the
in there.
one. But that's the.
I love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. That's good.
Yeah. Also, like, no poking in the wrong hole.
You're
Right.
gonna have to ask
Okay.
a rabbinic Jew about that.
Well, it's. I think it's Deuteronomy that
That's
has
Leviticus.
has the.
Do not lie with
okay.
another man.
Right.
Yeah, that's Leviticus 19.
No, and that is wrong.
Thou shalt not lie with
Do
another
not
man.
lie to another man. Because if you lie to a gay man, ooh, you are going to pay for it.
That's rough
But
stuff.
lie with another man, that should be everybody's right, don't you think?
Personally, you have a right to do what you would like to do personally.
With another person.
But I, as a Christian, do not believe that would be holy. I think it would be sinful. Yeah. But that's a personal I don't want to get too deep, but that's a personal theological.
No, we need to get a little deeper
Okay,
into this
fine.
because it's so important just to understand. Well, let me ask you what you believe. I believe that some people, a decided minority, maybe 1 out of 20, probably, for whatever reason that nature, this perfect nature that you described as perfect.
Well, it was designed perfect. It's all screwed up now.
Okay.
No, I mean, we have
Well,
disease and we have, all
right.
sorts of stuff. Got Down syndrome. Got all sorts
Okay,
of
well
problems.
then it wasn't designed perfect because it's
Well,
screwed
there was,
up.
we know what we believe though.
Oh,
We
I
believe
see.
there was a rebellion and a
Right.
contamination of nature.
Right, because.
That is sin.
Right, okay. If they hadn't eaten the apple.
My name is Carla Basadre. I'm originally from Peru. I also speak Spanish. I'm a primary care sports medicine physician at Christiana Care, and I have been in practice for 4 years after I graduated my training. I did my residency in family medicine, and I also have a subspecialty in primary care sports medicine. My areas of interest are diagnostic and procedural
We actually don't know it's an apple, but yes, it's
Oh my
inferred.
God, whatever the.
It very-
It's just fruit.
Well, let me ask you what you believe. I believe that some people, a decided minority, maybe 1 out of 20, probably, for whatever reason that nature, this perfect nature that you described as perfect.
Well, it was designed perfect. It's all screwed up now.
Okay.
No, I mean, we have
Well,
disease and we have, all
right.
sorts of stuff. Got Down syndrome. Got all sorts
Okay,
of
well
problems.
then it wasn't designed perfect because it's
Well,
screwed
there was,
up.
we know what we believe though.
Oh,
We
I
believe
see.
there was a rebellion and a
Right.
contamination of nature.
Right, because.
That is sin.
Right, okay. If they hadn't eaten the apple.
We actually don't know it's an apple, but yes, it's
Oh my
inferred.
God, whatever the.
It very well could have been a
shit-
mango.
Well,
I know,
you
no, don't get me started on mangoes. So,
as they say in West Hollywood, there's nothing like having a mango in your mouth.
it's George Costanza's favorite fruit, but yes, so.
But, oh damn, man, what was the point?
You were talking, yeah, I mean,
Yes,
there's
tell me.
something about Deuteronomy. Oh, the homosexuality, is
Yes,
that you want to talk?
homosexuality.
As we're keeping
So,
it
like-
on the lighter topic.
Thank you. So about 1 out of 20 people, maybe even 1 out of 10, I don't know. And then people will say there's a spectrum, maybe there's that too. Of course there is. Some people are like, what the kids call zesty. Not gay, but kind of on the waiting list. Okay, but let's say just gay. Like people who are just not attracted to the opposite sex. They're attracted and want to have sex with people of their own sex. Would you agree that that happens in nature?
Yeah, of course it does, yes. There are instances of species in the animal kingdom that do that.
Absolutely.
I
Right.
acknowledge this.
And we are in the animal kingdom.
Mhm.
In fact, we're number 1 with a bullet. Okay, so given that we both agree that that's a phenomenon that exists,
There's other things that happen in nature that aren't so good too. But just, yes, that's correct.
like on a par with this,
No, I'm just saying, just to say that it happens in the species of the animal kingdom doesn't make it necessarily morally okay.
but what's immoral about fucking in the ass? What I don't understand why the ass in itself, ipso facto, is immoral. It's just an ass. And the fact that some people want to fuck in there, I've done a million jokes about it. I don't get that. I mean, it's where the shit comes out. I just don't get it. If I was gay, I'd find another way. But that's just me. But they do want to do it. Why is there a moral dimension to this?
Again, I believe Scripture is God breathed. It's what the Bible says.
Okay, because the Bible says.
Yeah, I do. Correct.
But you do know, like, the argument from people like me, that kind of logical argument, is that, well, these books were really not written by a God. They were written by men, and it reflected.
Well, of course, they were
It
transcribed by men.
reflected the primitive views of people in that era who would, of course, have had primitive views. They also didn't understand germs or atoms. So their views on this were primitive, and they believed that there was something wrong with that I get it, that it was different than most of the people in the tribe, that, these two guys are going off and doing it. But that we can, as sentient beings now, logical, intellectual beings, recognize that this was from a long time ago, and now it's just something that happens in nature, that some people want to fuck this way and some people want to fuck this way, and there's no moral dimension to it and no reason to call it a sin.
Again, Christianity just...
そうかい。じゃあそれでいい。遊びは向きになりたいんじゃ。この恨みを決してはね。呪いの家。あれ？なんだか君にどんどん引き寄せられる。君が可愛すぎて。はい。グラサマダウン呪いいただきました。
disagrees with that. So, I mean, it's the only sin that God has sort of city over. So, I mean, and I'm not trying to be legalistic about it. It's just a fact, right?
I think,
and it's explicitly prohibited in the text. By the way, so is adultery, and so is stealing, and so is coveting. I'm guilty of coveting, and I mean, we're all guilty of many sins. I'm not trying to single that one out and try to be pompous or...
I think the phrase you're searching for is save your breath. This is what we believe, and I get it.
It's doctrine.
So, wait, coveting? What do you mean? Now, coveting is one you can't control.
No, that's not true.
Oh, stop it. You can control coveting. It's like saying you can control... If I say don't ever think of a pink elephant, you will think of a pink elephant.
It's a little bit more than thinking, we would say in the interpretation of coveting. It's to the place where you become obsessed.
Oh.
It takes your being.
No. Oh, no. That's coveting? I thought coveting was just wanting something you don't have.
That's, of course, you can't regulate every thought that you have, but coveting gets to the place where it becomes your identity of obsession.
Well,
and let me tell you why, because it says do not covet a specific thing. Your neighbor's wife, your donkey, so it's like a very specific thing. So, for example, if someone says, I want to be I can't stand Bill Maher. I want to be a comedian as successful as Bill Maher. It becomes their identity. I don't think that's good. I think it ruins your soul. I think you would agree with that too. You know people like that.
Don't give them any ideas.
No, come on. I mean,
they're already there.
But people that are consumed with, jealousy.
Totally.
And that's what we would say coveting is. Not just like, oh, don't think of the pink elephant. I'm not here to play air traffic control in your thoughts.
Right. Because, you're an attractive guy. I'm sure there's lots of MAGA groupies, and I'm sure coveting comes up. How can you not covet?
And praise God that I have a great wife.
Right.
And
she understands about the coveting.
Yeah, and we have a very healthy, loyal, wonderful marriage. And look, but male nature is, that's why there had to be a prohibition on adultery. Because it is male nature to...
No, I think it's actually easier to be a female in that way.
I completely agree.
Right. I covet being a female.
I wouldn't go that far. But
how wrong is that?
No, and again, good on you for being a liberal that acknowledges male-female distinctions. What a concept, right?
Of course.
I mean...
Of all the low-lying fruit that the Democrats just hand the Republicans to win elections, that's the one.
It's so funny. I joked around with my team the other day. I said, are they really going to just let us win every national election on this no men and female sports thing? Right. They can't surrender on this one issue.
It's so ridiculous.
It's a 90-10 issue.
Yeah.
There's 890 medals and trophies of men winning these competitions.
You lost Gavin Newsom on this. Okay? Take that as a hint, right? I mean, I think you were...
I was the one that asked the question.
Right. Yeah.
And he said, issue of fairness, all that.
Well, that's what I started to say when you sat down. You're everywhere now. You're Gavin New, everybody's podcast, and you know, look, I always say this: everybody's a monster till you talk to them. Not to say that there aren't some people who probably are monsters, but like, I mean, I've yet to find the horror show that is you. So, let me
Keep looking, Bill.
No, I want to.
You got to keep going.
I do. I want it.
You gotta
So tell
dig
me,
deeper.
cut me some slack, because we're friends now, right? We really are.
Absolutely.
Okay. So just cut to the chase. What is it that the 10% who hate me?
Oh yeah.
Tell me what they are wanting me to press you on now. What is the thing that presses their buttons the most about why you're incorrigible?
I don't even think you would agree with their accusations.
But I just want to know what it is.
They would say I'm hateful. They would say I'm a bigot. They would say that I'm a xenophobe. Those are the contentions
But
that I get.
based on what things that you said specifically?
I mean, I believe that transgenderism is a mental disorder, as it was, diagnosed in the.
So you don't think any people are like born, quote unquote, in the wrong body?
No, I don't agree.
No?
I think people might think they are born in a different body, but I believe it to be a mental disorder, as most of clinicians did up until the last 5 or 10 years.
Well, this is another one where the woke hates me. I mean, I did a whole thing on how I think, and we do disagree on this, by the way, because I do think there is such a thing
Fair
as
enough,
being
yeah.
born in the wrong body. But I said what's going on in the country is what I would call entrapment, because entrapment by legal means is when you suggest to people something they really wouldn't have done anyway. And I use the example of the Liberty Seven, the 7 African-American gentlemen in Miami who were planning to blow up the Sears Tower. They were not. The FBI came in to 7 people who were probably had good reason to be discontented with America and said, wouldn't it be great if we blew up the Sears Tower in Chicago for Allah? And they were like, yeah. And they didn't even have a gun. That's entrapment. And I
Or
think
the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping case, similar.
Yeah.
No, that's real. No, that's legit.
The kidnapping.
No, that was entrapment.
So she really wasn't?
No, that was an FBI entrapment thing.
With Asana, AI teammates are here to help keep work on track. Try it for free. A large touchscreen keeps everyone happy. The all-new Subaru Crosstrek. Dog tested, dog approved. Get 1.9% APR financing for 63 months and select new Subaru Crosstrek models for a limited time.
Bill, your channel's horrible.
Absolutely.
It was.
Oh yeah, it was like 5 events and 2 guys. Anyway,
All right,
we don't have to get.
For the record, I'm not acknowledging that I agree with that because I just don't know if
In the
about
comments, you guys can agree or disagree.
I'm just acknowledging that I respect Charlie Kirk enough to look into whether that is, and it could be true because I say it all the time. I don't believe anybody. Like you just lost my trust. All media, right, left, very few people. Do I have? Like, okay, I hear what you're saying. Now I have to go vet it.
Hilariously, more people that I know that are center left now say, I think Trump is not a monster because Bill Maher of what he said. On anything else.
Well, I didn't exactly say that.
Well, no, you said not a crazy person lives in the White House. That's what you said.
Right.
And you said he was respectful and
A person,
gregarious.
yes. I said not a crazy, but a person who acts crazy on the public
Those are
stage.
2 different things, though.
I know, but that's what matters. I also said it doesn't matter what he does in a private dinner with a comedian. What matters is who he's on the world stage. What bothers me about the critiques I get is that they don't acknowledge the points I myself made.
Fair enough. Let me ask
No, I don't mean you.
No. But would you prefer him to be crazy in private or crazy in public? I'm not saying he's crazy.
I just took it as a positive, and I said this. I took it as a positive that at least there is this other person that I see that is undeniable. And again, for all the people who we're losing truth. Yes, I was one of the first to say that we are losing truth. Okay, but I told you the truth. That's all I did. I went there and I told the truth of what happened. Would you?
And good for you.
And they would prefer that I had lied. I
Did you sign the Bill Maher Accords? It was like
exactly.
It was like the ratification of a treaty.
But he signed that piece.
I thought that was hilarious.
It is hilarious.
It's like you guys were negotiating.
First of all, the thing I did was so fucking funny. You give me a little credit
To sign the thing?
No, but the whole piece
First of
I
all,
did on my show
I
was
thought it was
hysterical.
terrific.
Yeah, it was funny.
And honestly, good for President Trump for hosting you. And
Right.
he had the magnanimity to do that. Right?
And listening. And again, the reason why I was the perfect choice for this was because nobody had been harder on him. So it was a real Nixon to China thing. And by the way, if you don't know what Nixon to China means, you probably shouldn't be commenting on political matters to begin with, my critical friends.
What your meeting, I thought, was a great window into the whole liberal world that shows the Donald Trump that I know and that I've gotten to know, which is, and I just thought it was hilarious when he was, asking you about Iran, right? He'll ask anybody about anything. He loves asking people's opinion. He listens more than he talks.
Right.
He'll solicit opinions. I know it blows people's minds when we say this.
Well, it also blows our minds because then he doesn't do the right thing.
Sometimes he does.
Sometimes he
did
does.
The embassy to Jerusalem.
I gave that whole list. I also gave the list of things that are horrible. Disappearing people and ignoring judges and gutting the government with glee. This tariff thing that even the conservative press has turned off on. So, yeah, it was just honest down the line on both sides.
Do you feel
I just told you what I saw,
and good for you,
and didn't. And I just told this to Harvey Levin on his show. I'm proud. I looked him in the eye and said, "You're scaring people." I'm proud. I looked him in the eye and said,
"How did he react to that?"
I said, I know, but see, that's the thing. I said that the night I gave it. I said, "You're scaring people. Why do you want to scare your own citizens so much?" And I know everybody wants to know what he said. And the truth is, I don't remember. But it wasn't.
What kind of drugs were you guys doing that night?
But it wasn't okay. I'll stop.
Okay, then you would have remembered.
That I would have remembered. So I have no illusions that my dinner with Donald Trump is going to change the nation. But to the haters, it's just like, as opposed to what? Not engaging at all?
That is their.
It's either me or Gretchen Whitmer with the binders in front of her face. I mean, I feel like I did it better. I went in there, I didn't give 1 inch on what I believe, or saying to his face what I believe. But, I told the truth about how he's different in private.
Do you think, what do you think about the idea, you going, here's how I would frame it, you going to meet with Trump would be the equivalent of Biden inviting me over for dinner? Meaning, is that fair?
Absolutely.
Okay, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Absolutely. Why do you think Biden or Obama wouldn't do that and Trump did?
I mentioned that too in the thing. I said, you know what?
You did. But
I said, because look, this was kind of a guy's dinner. And Donald Trump is a man of a certain age, of a certain way of life. I just think he's comfortable with the guys. And I also think he loves his wife more than is let on. But he just likes being with the guys. And it was a guy's dinner. We just had a good guys' time. And so, I said it, I voted for Obama, I voted for Clinton, but the idea that I could talk to them as freely as I felt this conversation was going is emblematic to me of why the Democrats lose the elections. Because they just don't feel that this is like a real person. And I know it's so weird to say that about Donald Trump, who I've said a jillion times is, a whiny little bitch. I mean, I could go through my greatest hits of insults, but this was about getting past that.
Well, would you look at that? A phone that can tell you what you're looking at.
Those are cirrus clouds. They often appear before a change in the weather.
Diabetes? It's complicated. It feels like if you aren't perfect, you aren't making progress. But progress doesn't mean changing your life in a day. Progress is drinking coffee like you like it, without an audience. It's turning charts and numbers into confident choice.
And maybe seeing that if we met in person, we don't hate each other as much, and we don't. And I'm sorry, I'm not gonna pretend that's a bad thing.
No, it's how you heal.
Even though he's doing terrible things.
I would say doing great things, but that's a separate issue. But
I mean, sending American citizens to foreign prisons.
He didn't do that. That was
a
one-liner.
He set a one-liner. You're so forgiving.
I am. That's the Christ in me.
I know, but
It's Jesus. You need Jesus, but you'll be more forgiving.
You wouldn't have been forgiving if Obama said it.
Well, let's be. What did Trump? Trump said that the homegrown ones. You could also argue that if it's an illegal alien homegrown. I don't even want to get too far deep into it. Let's just say you were. I don't think we should ever entertain American citizens going to prisons abroad.
Right. Because, I mean, you're a student of American history.
I try.
Yeah.
I don't know who Eugene O'Neill is, but...
Well, that's not history, that's the arts. And that's the 20th century. But yes, I'm happy to fill the gaps in your knowledge.
Thank you.
That's a big one. Eugene O'Neill's big. I would not like...
No, it's like
He's not like this small guy. But, okay, so the Iceman cometh, another big one. But Iceman, you can see it's not recent. But, I forget now what we're talking about. It's the pot. I blame the pot. Charlie, it's always the pot. You're right, it's terrible. I'm going to quit tomorrow.
It sharpens your memory.
What do you think would happen if you smoked pot?
Oh my goodness.
You never did? No. Even as a kid? No. But what, see, this is like sort of my version of the religion thing. Like, maybe you're missing out on the big picture the way I am with Christianity. Maybe, except I've already been exposed to Christianity and you've never been exposed to Rastafarianism or whatever my religion
Only
is.
one of those has an afterlife.
But you could, I mean, don't you think that would be a great thing to see corners of your mind that you have never looked into?
Tell me more. What happened? What do you mean by that? It's not a game. I want to
I will tell you. I'm happy to tell you. I'll put it this way. I've mentioned this before with potheads, I think, on my show, that when I have an important decision to make, I treat my mind the way Congress is designed, a bicameral institution. I will think about it sober, and I will think about it stoned. And then if they agree, they can reconcile and present a bill, and I will sign it.
And there's a reconciliation process.
But they both have to agree on this, because I just have a different perspective when I'm stoned. And it's very often sharper and more insightful and better. I mean, just editing, I know. Like, just writing in general, but I mean, I don't do all my writing stoned, but like, the final edit, it's like, oh yeah, you're right, that should go. Like things I did not see sober, I will see stoned. And, you might get stoned and be like, oh, Jesus, what? Are we kidding? I'm back from the dead? No, I'm kidding. And this is so Sunday's Easter. What are you going to do? It must be a big day. He is risen.
He is risen indeed, Bill. We're going to be celebrating the resurrection of our Lord.
Why do we say that in the present tense?
Because it is a constant truth in our life.
He is risen. I always noticed that was interesting to me.
That's a really important question, actually.
It is. Tell me.
Well, because the fact that he is risen transcends time. It's not just in the present sense, it's that of all time, that promise is accessible to all of us. And so it's a proclamation to all people, because if you said, hey, he was risen, it's just merely a historical event. It almost underplays the metaphysics of it.
I'm just always fascinated in the way really, really fine intellectual minds employ themselves for the purpose of arguing things that are so inarguable. It does, because it's almost like a challenge. Like, I'm so smart that I can make this thing, which is so fucking stupid, seem like a real.
No, it's fine.
No, but you get where I'm coming from. Like, I'm going to take something that is so anti-intellectual, even though I can argue like an intellectual.
However, but you have to acknowledge, even the greatest minds of history have been mesmerized by the scriptures. Isaac Newton, Thomas Aquinas.
Well,
Isaac Newton wrote more about biblical prophecy than even physics. And so there's something about the scriptures that are intellectual, that does push your limits. And that's what I think is so beautiful about our faith, is it can be accessible to everyone, but also infinitely nourishing in exploration.
So why if there's this other truth that's beyond this this metaphysical truth, why so many different versions of it that only seem to cause wars. You know, Protestants and Catholics.
Eastern Orthodox, Mormon.
Someone asked me recently, like, you know, like, I won't say who, but sometimes people have, you know, don't know history that well, and they're like, Bill, like, okay, so Columbus, 1492, lands on America, and we don't really then have the first
Dying like the beast. Pre-order now.
Trust can show up with a warm smile,
And I don't.
or even colder than ice. With a complete end-to-end cold chain. One more reason, UPS is the most trusted shipping brand. UPS.
colony until 1607, Jamestown. So somebody said to me, what happened in that century? You know what happened in that century? Martin Luther, at the beginning of that century, said there's an alternative to Catholicism.
95 theses that were
Not nailed on the door of Wittenberg in 1517. And for the next 100 years, they just fucking killed each other all over Europe about who was right about that. And that's why it took a century after Columbus landed to go back, because they were preoccupied with killing each other over whether the Pope in Rome was the devil, and you know, and then
or is the Eucharist the literal body of Christ?
I mean, did his foreskin ascend to heaven with him, or was that left here because he was a Jew? I mean, there was just a lot of silly questions.
There was a lot of debates.
Arianism, remember that?
Sure, yeah, or dualism, or modalism,
Right.
or I mean, yeah.
But
how do we come to Trinitarianism as a whole?
I find the first few centuries of Christianity the most fascinating.
Why?
Well, because they were deciding on it.
Yeah.
I mean, Christianity, for you non-history majors, Christ dies in 33, of course, and then it wasn't until 3 centuries later, around
Council of Nicaea.
Well, that's even later, but the 330, I think, or maybe that was when the Emperor Constantine declared.
He convened the Council of Nicaea.
Right, okay. So that's when Christianity becomes the official religion of the Roman Empire.
And
so it took 300 years.
And that's when the Nicene Creed was created.
Right. And in those 300 years,
there were a ton of debates.
First, it was like, you know, Christianity was just persecuted. You know, it
was surviving the first 100 years.
The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church, was said by Tertullian in 202. So that's 200 years into it, and they were still martyrs. You know, they were fed to the lions, that shit. And then slowly it catches on. The idea that it gets good in the afterlife was very attractive to an empire that was like a lot of slaves. If you're a slave, this is a good deal. And so finally in 330, it becomes the official religion. And then you have the church fathers, Ambrose, Augustine, right, and Jerome, and Augustine is writing in like 430, I think.
City of God.
Yes, he's writing in the city of Hippo, and you know, just the way I don't want to call them exactly press agents, but kind of the way they formed the idea of the church in those early centuries. You know, it was something that needed.
Well, it needed decisions to be made, because our answer would be, which I don't think you'll find overly persuasive. See, I was going to do it right when you were swallowing. Is that when you have something true, you have a lot of bad forces that try to pervert it, and you have to be able to, you have to refine it, you have to clarify it. And I mean, the idea of the Trinity was one of the most important one of those debates. Again, you got dualism, modalism, Arianism. You had Gnosticism, which was a huge debate of the early church, and of course, it was concluded in Trinitarianism, which we would argue.
It's just so much arguing about how many angels are on the head of a pin.
That wasn't the arguments were much more consequential than even like
I guess if you believe
eschatology.
If you know, there's an old saying in comedy: buy the premise, buy the bit. if you believe the premise that he's God and all the, then you care whether the foreskin went with him or not.
The big debate was like, is Christ God? That was the big one. That was the biggest of them all. And it nearly split the church in 5 different parts. And the idea of the Trinity was eventually decided upon, which we believe to be.
In religious, I went to a Holy Land and they have the Jesus there because they reenact the whole crucifixion. And so I interviewed Jesus and, I hit him with that about it's supposed to be very proud. They're very proud that they're monotheistic,
Right.
like the pagan people. They have many gods. These fucking heathens, these savages.
The river, the sun.
Yes, from
the
shithole
corn, the
countries.
dirt. Right.
Crazy people with so many gods. And then you have the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. You can pray to the Mother. I mean, it's just a lot of people involved.
It's one Godhead in 3 parts. The Trinity's very complex.
So this is what Jesus said.
Oh yeah, tell me what he said. Yeah.
He said, and this stopped me in my tracks for a minute, because it's the kind of bullshit that makes you go, that makes people go, oh. And to me, it would make, oh, no. Okay, so he said it's like ice.
It's like water. Yeah, it's in 3 parts. Yeah. Water, vapor, water, or ice. See, I'm glad I didn't use that one. You wouldn't have liked it.
Well, Jesus already tried.
Did he say it in Aramaic? But
it's a pretty good analogy.
No, but that's what we'd say. It's the same thing in 3 different parts, right?
But they did add the Holy Ghost like 3 centuries in, because the church needed another boat.
No, that's not true.
Oh, it is true. There was no Holy Ghost in the beginning.
In Matthew 4, Christ is baptized, and it says the Spirit came upon him. God, the Father says, it's my Son, I am pleased, and he is the Son. So you have all 3 parts of the Godhead right there.
Is there any hour of the day or night where you wouldn't message me?
Yeah, there's a time where I wouldn't message you. Shit, I probably wouldn't message him from like 1 a.m. to 5 a.m.
Seeing some deception here.
Okay, so maybe if I woke up for a pee in the middle of the night, you could also get a text then.
You're telling the truth.
The Holy Ghost is named there?
Spirit. It says the Spirit of the Lord came upon him.
That sounds like the Lord.
Well, then God the Father said, this is my Son in whom I am pleased. So 3 distinct parts of the Godhead. It's the best picture of the Trinity we have. And then in the book of Acts.
So they were all in the same room at the same time?
Well, in the river, right? I mean, in the scene, right?
God the Father was there?
God the Father was audible, right?
Audible. Oh, so he was on Zoom.
Yeah, he was phoning it. Christ was being baptized by John the Baptizer, and the Spirit of the Lord.
Baptizer, John the Baptist.
It's actually baptizer, yeah.
That's what they call him now?
Yeah.
Is that new?
You gotta keep up with the time.
I mean, is that new?
It's a fun, wonky theological.
Why did they change it?
Because it was actually in the, again, this is like
What's wrong with John the Baptist?
It's so insignificant, because it actually, in the old Greek, it was a verb. It was the baptizer, the one. It's completely irrelevant. It doesn't matter.
It's like New Coke. Stick with what works. You know what? It was great, John the Baptist. There's nothing wrong with John the Baptist. It's a great title.
And then in Acts, it says the Spirit of the Lord came upon the disciples at Pentecost.
Well, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this.
Well, thank you.
I mean, again, I'm sure there's something that I'm not asking
I've
you
been
to
an admirer
show
of Bill
me.
Here's for a while. We're on different planets, obviously, on the spiritual religious stuff. But when you spoke against the woke, that for me was a proving moment. And I have to say something, and this is 100% true. You had more moral courage than pastors that I know that went along with the woke crazy train. And you deserve credit for that, because it was of high cost.
Until we get rid of that shit, they're never going to win another election.
I agree. They're not going to take political advice from me.
No, but they might from me.
They could.
And
they should.
Not the 10%, but that's 10%.
They're very loud.
They're very loud, but that's it. And I, as FDR once said, I welcome their hatred, because they're just, first of all, they have no integrity. They don't ever present the full argument. They just cherry pick. I mean, everybody does it to everybody, so I'm not saying I'm unique here. But that is part of the problem of our discourse, is that everybody just wants to forward their narrative. No one is really interested in the full truth. Just the truth. Just give me the truth. And that's the crowd I'm going for.
Yes.
And
to be honest, when I go to these campuses and we're drawing these huge crowds, in some ways, we're benefiting from the ways that the old school comics would benefit on college campuses because we're saying the stuff you're not allowed to say. Like, we are the rebellion type energy.
They must be so thirsty for it.
Of course, and like
They're kids.
Yes.
It's like innate that they want to be, here's something that's not politically correct.
Yes, and you think about it, it's like you're a guy on a college campus at any one of these tour stops we're going to, right? Boise State, University of South Carolina, Oklahoma State University. And they are constantly in this bubble of if I say one wrong word, I could have my entire career ruined. If I say the wrong joke, if I laugh at the wrong thing, if I use the wrong pronoun, they're living in a totalitarian environment, a cultural totalitarian environment.
Okay, you're gonna have to stay a little more because I want to ask you about this because now you got me on colleges and that's been one of my big.
No, we got to talk about this.
That's been one of my big fucking targets.
Big time.
I mean, it was in my book, it was in my special. I called them the mouth of the river, from which all the nonsense flows.
It is a Wuhan laboratory.
That was my.
I probably got it from you.
I did. I said, if ignorance is a disease, Harvard Yard is the Wuhan wet market. That was my joke.
I got you. Okay. Now we can say Wuhan lab, but yeah, that's right.
Okay. And Trump's going after the colleges now.
Which I fully support.
Yeah, but as always with his shit, it's like, it's not exactly legal the way he's doing it. You know, it's coercive. It's, I get that, I am behind the feeling of it. I'm not sure this is the way to do it, but the feeling of it, yes, they have become places that, and this is again one of your big bailiwicks. You know, this is one of the places you really got to. I think this is help you get where you are. They have become places that are two things: not really interested in teaching, just getting a point of view on the world into the kids' heads, which is not the way it was when I went to college at all. And also just very anti-Western civilization.
Completely.
And this is Western civilization. And you live in Western civilization. You're soaking in it. You're enjoying it.
Yes.
All the things that make your life, and especially the life of minorities and oppressed people better, come from Western civilization. Rule of law, scientific inquiry, freedom of speech, democracy, all the things, women's rights, gay rights,
all of it.
All of it is Western civilization. And the question is, how do you extirpate that from universities without, I mean, going after the research money? It has nothing to do with it.
It does and it doesn't. I mean, so first of all, you're right.
You use your phone for pretty much everything.
Gemini, check my calendar. When's the last?
Let's just start with our agreement. Colleges have become a place where they want everyone to look different but think the same. Their idea of diversity is like, okay, we look at the yearbook photo and everyone has, race diversity.
Everything has to look like Angelina Jolie's Christmas card.
But they all think as if they're at the Democrat National Committee meeting.
Right.
There's no diversity of thought. There's no heterodox opinion. They tried to get Western civilization taught at Stanford. You know this story. Well over 15 to 20 years ago. And they removed it. They removed it from the core curriculum.
Really?
I'm going to be honest. These places have to be basically burned to the ground. Metaphorically.
Okay, metaphorically.
Yeah.
Well,
take Harvard. So you say the research money. First of all, they take 10 to 15% of that in overhead. Why does Harvard, with a $50 billion endowment, need $2 billion in research money?
Just ask Harvard the same question.
That's a hedge fund with a college attached.
Right.
That's not a university.
Right.
Right? I mean, that's something completely different. Stanford, $40 billion endowment. Yeah, Yale, $35 billion endowment. And look, some of this research is awesome. And I got to agree with you. Some of it they should do a case-by-case basis. But a lot of it, though, is this woke stuff that would, take your breath away. I mean, research into transgender mice. I mean, it was just... But the U.S. taxpayer dollars are funding that?
See, I called that out on my show. That was bullshit. It wasn't transgender. See, that worries me about you, Charlie. You seem to have swallowed that one whole like a snake does a mouse without looking into it. It was transgenic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was not, but it's hugely different. Transgender, that's just going along with what the mom thinks. It wasn't. He got it wrong, and no one was around to tell him that he got it wrong. He just went with it. Transgender. It wasn't transgender. It was transgenic. They were studying mice for health reasons, serious cancer-solving reasons. Nothing to do with transgender. So
I stand corrected on that.
okay.
I do too. That's the case.
But a lot of these universities have superfluous research departments that are bloated, and then go raise your own money for it, is my position. If you want to go do this stuff, go raise your own money.
No, of course. So as Christian as you are, you don't want us to be the Christian United States of
I
America.
want to see the body politic become Christian, but I want the Constitution to be our North Star.
Not by coercion.
No, because that's not love, that's force.
Okay.
We as Christians believe you should voluntarily use your agency, give your life to Christ.
And you and you think that someday we all will get on the train there?
I don't know if I'm optimistic or pessimistic. I don't know. It's tough. The church rates are going down.
Right.
I mean, we're seeing a little bit of a plateauing there. Your side's been winning, Bill, the last 20 years.
You're going to be tired of all the winning. That's all I'm going to say.
But are you cheering for those church rates to go down?
Yes.
You think it would make the world a better place?
I do.
Has it made Europe better?
The idea that you think we need Christianity as the pillar here to hold up this edifice, I can't agree with.
I think you could agree that there's a Christian inheritance that is unique. And that's Tom Holland's argument, who's an atheist.
That's true.
And that there's something we've inherited of these.
Well, what we do know is that the ideas of the Enlightenment were ideas from people who were Christian. I mean, obviously Rousseau and John Locke and the people here in America.
It was very Christian.
Christian. I mean, Christianity to varying degrees. Again, deism. Again, Thomas Jefferson taking Jesus out of his miracles out of the Bible. So but that's the basic tradition. It is a Western tradition that we seem to have to always apologize for. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not.
No, I'm joking.
But no, if America was 81% Christian or 81% Islamic, what's a better country?
Yes, according to the ideals I believe in, if you think faith, I know you do, is the most important thing, but I happen to think freedom is the most important thing. Personal liberty, again, human rights, rule of law, scientific inquiry, democracy, freedom of speech, all these things which are absent much more in those societies than the society I live in.
Totally.
All right, Charlie. Okay. Charlie.
Bill, thank you.
That was a
pleasure.
Real fun.
Thank you.
Okay. Tell your friends.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter. He is risen.
He is risen indeed.
He is risen. Oh, it's a pleasure. We wanted to do it for a while.
Yeah.
And I know you wanted to do this before real time.
Yes.
But now that we did this, you could do real time.
I would love to. Yeah, I wanted to get to know you.
Yeah. I think it was better this way.
Absolutely.
First. And
I watch your show almost every week.
Do you know what's really fun? Making a website on this.
Hey, we're How Ridiculous, 3 childhood friends and digital content creators that do epic stuff from Perth, Australia.
We've got about 50 million followers. We're in the billions of views. And we're a small team. We always felt like our content was all about entertainment and being fun, but there was also this, sort of professional business.
Okay, so this one I want to put on.
I'm doing good. Welcome to hour 3 of today's program. I I spent the first 2 hours
Thank you for
talking
joining us
about
tonight.
Charlie
Our
as an
speaker tonight
individual
is Charlie Kirk,
whom I knew
a
well and
prominent
known
conservative
since
commentator.
2012 or
He's founder and
2013
CEO
when he
of
was
Turning
literally
Point
just getting
USA,
started and
which has a
talking to
presence
10
on
high school
over
students in a
3,000
room.
high school
And there are
and
lots of
college
people who know
campuses.
Charlie a lot
It
better
is the
than me.
largest
But
and
there is
fastest
only one
growing
person I
youth
think can put this
activist
in
organization
perspective for us.
in USA.
And it's Victor
and
Davis
he's written
Hanson.
4
Victor,
books.
of course,
Thank you for joining us today.
classicist historian extraordinaire with Stanford.
So I'll start with
He
some
is
questions from me,
he
and then we're
authored
going
so
to
many
move to the
wonderful books,
questions.
including most recently, The End of Everything. And
Okay, Victor Davis Hanson and Hugh react to assassination of Charlie Kirk. Okay, that's what's in the background. That should be playing second. So let me move this over. I knew I heard something else in the background. I'm like, what is that? Cambridge Union Society.
Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. Our speaker tonight is Charlie Kirk, a prominent conservative commentator. He's founder and CEO of Turning Point USA, which has a presence on over 3,000 high school and college campuses. It is the largest and fastest growing youth activist organization in USA, and he's written 4 books. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Brilliant. So I'll start with some questions from me, and then we're going to move to the questions from the audience for the people who've submitted them, and we'll be asking them at the dispatch box. My first question is about Turning Point USA's professor watch list. Its mission is described as exposing college professors who discriminate against conservative students and advance leftist propaganda in the classroom, with examples including feminism, abortion, and socialism. How would you respond to critics, such as PEN America, who see it as supporting what it claims to deride, which is the intimidation and ostracization of those who express controversial views on campus?
Roku Ads Manager puts Roku's reach within your reach. Sign up at ads.roku.com.
Well, we're getting right into it, aren't we? Thank you. So yeah, just by background, Turning Point USA has now grown to be the largest campus conservative organization in the country. I come from a view that conservatism is widely underrepresented in American campuses. And by conservatism, I literally mean the defense of Western values, free markets, rule of law, individual initiative, entrepreneurship, the Constitution, and so on and so forth. And in American college campuses in particular, and I don't know, I'm guessing that this campus is, I don't even want to guess. We'll see what happens when we have dialogue. But I do know that there's some great professors that do teach the Western canon, which is far too missing from American universities, is that American college campuses have become a place where they strive to have everyone look different but think the same. And in America, university and college tuition is through the roof, and students and parents have a moral obligation to know who is teaching their kids. And for these professors that have such a major objection for being on our professor watch list, if they don't say obscene things, then they will not end up on our watch list. I'm talking about professors that were excited about what happened on October 7th. I'm sorry, if you're excited about what happened on October 7th, then you deserve to be on a professor watch list, and people should know all about you. And if people want to fire you as a consequence of that, or if people don't want to go to that school as a consequence of that, then so be it. And so, what was the criticism exactly?
It was that the watch list supports what it claims to deride, which is the intimidation and ostracization.
Oh, yeah, I mean, sorry, thank you. If the publicizing of certain ideas is intimidation, then I think that's just laughable. It is using our own free speech to expose professors who we believe are making America a worse country. And in fact, I believe in America, higher education has largely posed a threat to Western values. And I think we need more students and more parents to realize the moral rot that universities have become in the Western world.
So Turning Point Academy mentions the importance of promoting intellectual growth. How would you respond to critics that such an education system stifles intellectual growth through establishing a fixed set of values, for example, regarding God, life beginning at conception, and 2 genders, rather than promoting intellectual diversity?
Sure, I mean, at some point, you're going to have to get to a truth claim. So even to say that you want intellectual diversity means that you think intellectual diversity matters, but by what standard? So you have to actually, at some point, say that something is good. So if someone says, well, the criticism that you're going to tell a kid that something is good but something else, you should have intellectual diversity. Okay, why? By what standard? By what book? By what scholar? By what author? By what worldview? We believe, as an organization, that the West is the best for many reasons. In particular, my own personal views. I'm a Christian. I'm not ashamed of it. And Christianity brought to the world things that we all take for granted. Tom Holland, who actually was educated here and is one of the great classicists and taught himself ancient Greek, he wrote in his book Dominion that even if you hate Christianity, your critique of Christianity is actually using Christianity itself. And so this idea of intellectual diversity, I totally support that. And I think that students should read different books and should read different authors. At some point, though, the purpose of education is not to have an endless buffet line for students to sample every bad idea in the world. It's to point them to the good, the true, and the beautiful. And I think we've lost what the purpose of education is. Education in Latin literally means to lead forth. To lead forth out of the cave was the original analogy.
All right, give me a second, guys. I gotta do something real quick.
To train a child up in the ways in which they will go. And we make no apologies for instituting a belief that legalism in God is better than secularism. The defense of universal human equality is a good for all humanity, amongst many other things that you articulated.
So, how do you reconcile the importance of freedom, which is listed as Turning Point USA's mission on your website, with the restrictions on bodily autonomy, which you support, including abortion, trans-affirming healthcare, and birth control? And how would you respond to criticism of your limited view of freedom?
Sure. So, first of all, birth control I don't have that strong of views of, so except the fact that I've criticized how actually young women that take hormonal birth control might have side effects that are not always disclosed them. As far as abortion and trans-affirming care, I'll get into that in a second, but I find it laughable, not from you, of course, but some of the people that are always very critical of, Charlie, why don't you just believe in bodily autonomy? I'm sorry, didn't you just mandate a vaccine for the last couple of years? I couldn't visit your country for 2 years because I didn't take a vaccine. So it's my body, my choice, unless it's, so it's my body, my choice if it's another human being in the womb, but it's not my body, my choice if I want to take a vaccine. That was neither safe nor effective. And we all must be very honest about the fact that the public health experts of both of our countries never apologized for the fact that they made you take a vaccine that, by the way, has a lot of side effects for a lot of people in this room, and no one wants to say that. As a side note, though, all the bodily autonomy people, you guys can laugh all you want, it's fine. All the bodily autonomy people suddenly got really silent when we decided to say, we're going to control your body and control the movement of what you can do. You can't go to the pub. You can't go to the local gathering of friends. You can't go to university. You can't even go to the UK if you don't have a card. So that's a fun contradiction for me. At the same time, there's a difference between freedom or liberty and license. Liberty is the pursuit of things that allow human beings to flourish at its highest possible potential. License is not those things. So the first thing, you do not have a ability, and I'm sure there will be a question about this, under any agreed upon Western morality, which is derived from a Christian construct, to murder another human being. You do not have that freedom. And so we believe, obviously, because we believe in very basic biology and science, that life begins at conception, and therefore that life deserves universal human rights as applied equally under our laws. As far as trans-affirming care, as far as if
my
you
fault,
want to do
y'all.
something over the age of 18,
I gotta
knock
fix
yourself
this
out.
angle.
You guys actually have been better than our country on this. You have the Cass report that our country's lost its mind, where the Cass report itself issued an opinion based on my limited but somewhat understanding of it that trans-affirming care for children is highly questionable at best. And so we all can agree that students that are not, or young people that are not yet of age or mature age of 18, of course we limit certain freedoms or licenses or liberties for 7 to 15-year-olds. In my country, they can't own guns till they're 18. In my country, they can't even drink till they're 21. In my country, they can't vote until they're 18 in America. And so until someone is of age, you're going to limit that. And so I believe that we should all agree
I thought about that, y'all. I know that was kind of crazy.
In particular, 15, 16, 17, there should be a prohibition that you should not be able to cut off your breasts or go under life-altering, irreversible, gender-affirming care just because you might be going through a temporary phase.
Ready?
I think so.
You think so? Come on, Mark. Yes or no answer. More?
So you spoke about vaccines and the COVID-19 vaccine. How would you respond to accusations about you misusing your platform and purporting misinformation during the COVID-19 pandemic, including speaking against the COVID vaccine and speculating about deaths caused by it, and being briefly banned from Twitter for claiming that hydroxychloroquine was 100% effective in treating the virus?
Well, I'm back on Twitter now, thankfully. New ownership. I appreciate the question. Has anyone asked our public health leaders that question? Will they apologize for everything they got wrong? The lockdowns were completely unnecessary. They should never have happened. And the young people of the West lost proms, graduation, whatever equivalent you have here in the UK, for no good reason whatsoever. And you guys can laugh all you want, but let's look at the data. Suicide rates of young people in the West went up after COVID. There's speech delays, there's a misery problem, and we locked down the generation of people that needed to be locked down the least, that have now bear the consequences the most, on top of a hyperinflation crisis, which caused a housing crisis, which has caused a sovereign debt crisis. All for what? Because we were worried that something that materially was never a greater threat than the seasonal flu to these people in this room it was never a greater threat than the seasonal flu. That is a fact of science, because we have to trust the science. And again, we can go back and forth, but this is the more important thing. It was never about trusting the science. It was about trusting the scientists that confirm this view. There is something called the Barrington Declaration. If you don't know what this is, all of you have a moral obligation to know what it is. The Barrington Declaration was thousands of scientists from around the world that said these lockdowns are doing more harm than good. And the one thing that we never talked about through all this, that now the pharma companies magically discovered after they were able to proliferate a vaccine, is early interventions. Is the fact that if you catch COVID early, what is your vitamin D level? Let's have a serious conversation about whether or not you're chronically overweight. In my country, we are a fat country. We're good at a lot of things. We're also really good at gaining weight. Why didn't we also say to the American people, be honest, if you are 50 pounds overweight, you have a much higher likelihood of dying of COVID? Well, that would be considered to be politically insensitive in America. So how do I respond to critics? Honestly, I'm proud of the work that we did during COVID. I opposed the lockdowns from the beginning. We talked about early interventions. We platformed people that were right all along. And meanwhile, the people that got the most important public policy questions of our time wrong have never felt any sort of criticism. They've never actually faced justice. And I think we, the people of the West, deserve an apology from our leaders for all the suffering that they inflicted on the young people of both our countries.
So you've described recently how it used to be 10 vaccines, now it's 72 shots for our babies. Something's not right and our kids are sicker than ever. How would you respond to criticism that your rhetoric regarding vaccinations is dangerous and irresponsible when considering a global rise in vaccine distrust and deaths from vaccine-preventable diseases, including measles and meningitis?
Well, first of all, number one, you can use your own agency and you can get 9 COVID shots if you want. I'm not preventing that. I think, though, that a robust conversation needs to happen that inoculations have risen across America. I'll just talk about America. I know this for certain. Inoculation and vaccine rates have risen, and chronic diseases are higher than ever. And there is a perplexing rise in a lot of the secondary and third-tier issues. Of course, I'm pro-vaccine. If you want to get vaccines, we should do it prudently, we should do it appropriately, we should do it smartly. But in the same way, we should also simultaneously respect medical freedom and religious conscience. The criticism is this. I'm not a scientist and I don't play one on TV, but I use human reason and one would say common sense to also ask the very simple question. The public health authorities got almost every major problem of COVID, every question of COVID wrong. Why should we continue to delegate trust to them? Trust is earned, it is not given. And so, yeah, look, I'm sure someone's going to ask a question or two about that. That's fine. I'm by no means a quote-unquote expert on all that. But let me also question this. The experts, they have to now, number one, you have to apologize when you get something really wrong. And I think you have to get back into the public square and prove to us why we should trust you when, for example, in my country, I'm not sure if it was for you guys, we had this thing of 6 feet to slow the spread. Anthony Fauci just made it up. The data shows that he just arbitrarily made it up. There is not a single public health reason why we had 6 feet to slow the spread. Locking down schools. Actually, what made COVID worse and delayed the inevitable spread. The only country in Europe that I think was a model was Sweden. They kept schools open, they kept restaurants open, they leaned into herd immunity, and generally their statistics were way better than some of the other countries that were correlated to it. So everyone has the agency to do what they want to see fit. And yes, I do think that there is something troubling when the childhood vaccination schedule goes from 10 shots to 72 shots, some of which are things, for example, hepatitis B. Upon birth in America, I don't know how it is in the UK, within seconds, they will inoculate a child against hepatitis B. Number one, hepatitis B vaccine expired by the age of 13, and there's only 2 ways to get hepatitis B, through sexual intercourse or through intravenous drugs or some other correlated way. So unless it is a son or a daughter of an active drug user or a drug mom, totally get it, which you can test for in utero, the argument for hepatitis B vaccine within seconds of a baby being born is, I think, questionable at best. And so those of us that even ask the question, why are we using a hepatitis B vaccine when we can maybe wait till they're 12 or 13 when they're sexually active. No, you must do it and you must just trust the science. Okay, well, that's not good enough for us.
And we're sure this is shocking for many of you that have been just hearing the news and tuning in, but the response is being complicated by the mysterious domino effect of power failures along the East Coast, as well as around Los Angeles. Hey! We're already hearing reports of blackouts throughout the United States, looting and widespread panic in some areas. While no one has yet claimed responsibility for the bombing or bombings, but I'm sure at this point the authorities have not ruled out terrorism or all other attacks from a rogue state. We're giving the news as we get it, and obviously this is worrying, but stay tuned. In Los Angeles has experienced a nuclear detonation.
Call Evan.
Calling Evan.
Jeff. Did you hear the news?
Yeah. World War III.
That'd be lots of nukes. This is just one so far. Terrorism, most likely.
What's our play?
Got a place. Prepper. Been planning for the big one.
Rich guy. Another thing.
Called a few months back. Need security guys.
You tell me when and where. I'm there.
I'll send coordinates. Come jumped up.
I got your back, boss.
Call Tara.
Calling Tara.
Not getting on the freeway.
Are you texting Lexi?
Is that your girlfriend?
She's not my girlfriend.
You can't get a girlfriend.
I can get a girlfriend if I wanted a girlfriend.
You're not old enough to date.
Says the baby.
I'm 8.
Yeah, okay, he is right. He is right, though. For sure. It is
Is that Dad?
You're not answering your phone.
What are you doing?
America's just been attacked.
What?
Nuclear bomb just hit Los Angeles.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Yeah, Mom, look.
Oh, crap.
Follow me home. We're headed to the Ross place.
Who's Ross?
So Turning Point USA acquired Students for Trump in 2019 and worked on targeting students on college campuses, especially ahead of the 2020 election. However, despite an increase in youth turnout in 2020, Trump support was worse with young people in several battleground states than 2016. How would you respond to critics who claim that this failure was partly due to Trump outsourcing youth outreach to Turning Point USA?
How did he do this last election?
Well, I mean, his support was better in youth, but it was still lower with the lower amongst youth than the Democrat support was.
We won the youth vote in the state of Michigan, and we ran basically an entire youth operation in 2024. In fact, it doesn't. Anyone can look on ChatGPT. I mean, whatever you want. Like, we crushed the youth vote. Even Democrats acknowledge it. There's story after story after story. Why are young people moving so far to the right? And so, will you give me credit for that?
I mean, why do you think that, like, in several key states, even in 2024, amongst the young people...
We did anywhere between 10 to 25 points better in the key battleground states. This is not just conjecture, it is material fact. Both young men and young women moved to the right dramatically. In America, young people are Donald Trump's most loyal cohort, not even baby boomers. According to the Yale Youth Poll and the Harvard Youth Poll, Donald Trump has actually made the most gains amongst younger voters. And I guess maybe something we did had something to do with that.
And what do you see as the future of conservatism amongst young people?
I think it's going to be the dominant, God willing, dominant worldview amongst young people in America, and it's ascendant. Again, what we are seeing in states, and I don't know if it's the case here in the UK, young men in particular are on pace to be the most conservative generation in history, and it's an exciting trend, and we're leaning into it. We see this in the macro trends. We also see this in micro. Young women are following suit. There's kind of two Gen Zs. There's Gen Z that was basically out of college or near end of college at COVID, and then there was Gen Z that was in high school. What would the equivalent term here be in high school? Whatever you call... Yeah, okay. And they had their lives obliterated. Those are the most formative times of their life, 15, 16, 17, 18. They were forced to wear masks. They had to do school through Zoom. They saw friends that, many of whom that took their life, our suicide rates went up exponentially. And also, on top of that, we had this insane race stuff in America during 2020, otherwise known as Floydapalooza, where we decided to burn our country because a guy drug overdosed on the streets of Minneapolis. And that's true, he did drug overdose, not just my opinion, just read the medical examiner report, the Hennepin County medical examiner report. And so then all of a sudden we decided to commit cultural suicide and throw statues. By the way, in London, they threw a statue into the river or something because we're systemically racist. I'm sorry, our two countries are the two least racist countries ever to exist in the history of the world. And you guys should also be thanking the Lord that you have someone like William Wilberforce to look up to, and you should be building statues to Wilberforce, not taking down statues of your history, because it's thanks to Western values that we abolished slavery, and the world is a profoundly better place because of that worldview, and we as conservatives are unafraid to tell that story and that truth.
So you've condemned the Civil Rights Act of 1964 as a huge mistake.
Correct.
Why do you believe it was a mistake to pass anti-discrimination legislation? And what do you think would be better policy for being treated fairly and equally, which you see as an American principle?
Yeah, nothing against the intent, but it was too broadly written, and it played into something called disparate impact. Disparate impact was woven within the Civil Rights Act, and disparate impact basically says if two racial groups have different outcomes, the answer must be racism. It does not allow any legal nuance. So there are four components to, quote unquote, the anti-racist regime of America. I don't pretend to know what goes on in this country. I can just talk about America. I'm sure that's fine. And it's four components: affirmative action, critical race theory, DEI, and disparate impact. Those are the kind of the four components. All of them have their subsection. The Civil Rights Act led the way to affirmative action, which is weaponized, quote unquote, reverse racism against Asian and white people. And the Civil Rights Act also blazed the trail for disparate impact as a legal theory, basically saying that if Black Americans are doing worse in a group, it might not be because of marital differences or cultural differences or single motherhood issues. It must be racism. And so because of that, the Civil Rights Act was too broadly written. It's now being applied in my country as a way to get rid of voter integrity, to get rid of election integrity, to get rid of voter ID. The Civil Rights Act is also now being applied to put men in female locker rooms. So the intent, it should have been a single page or a two-page bill to say that you cannot discriminate against based on the color of somebody's skin, period, end of story. Instead, we get a multiple 100-page bill with lots of chapters and lots of lesser-known amendments that created basically a permanent anti-racist bureaucracy within our federal government to go find racism where it doesn't exist and create it in new places where otherwise did not exist.
So you've described Martin Luther King Jr. as awful, not a good person, even though many conservative commentators have spoken in support of what he says, including his quote, where they will be judged about his children, where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
He was right.
Hi, I'm JT, and I made Result Hunter, the search engine for conservatives. Let me just tell you what it does. First of all, big tech right now is run by a bunch of elitist people who all happen to vote the same way and who all happen to live in huge cities on the West Coast. And so Result Hunter takes those elitist values and elitist sources and kind of pushes them down a little bit in the search engine. Meanwhile, it takes those sources of truth that we believe have been deranked a little bit by Google, and it pushes those up a bit. And the main thing that you'll gain from using the search engine is that your ad revenue that you generate by going all over the web will be much more likely to support conservatives and things that support conservative values rather than things that support elitist and liberal cultural values. So thank you. Please use resulthunter.com if you're a conservative. Hit try now to go over there, and it'll become your default when you hit add to browser and follow the instructions. See you at resulthunter.com.
So does his speech and his general ethos not then agree with your views on
Well, I've complimented him as well, but I mean, first of all, he was a personally morally flawed man. And to be fair, a lot of people I sometimes look up to are morally flawed. But also, I mean, we're all morally flawed. We're all sinners, I would hope we, actually, many of you probably don't believe in God, so never mind. Look, Martin Luther King, in a lot of different ways, had a promise of a colorblind America. I don't want to go too deep into this, I don't know how, maybe it's very interesting to UK students about MLK, but there's a mythology around MLK that does not warrant the reverence that he gets treated with in America. Should he be mentioned amongst lots of people in the 20th century that was complicated and at the end of his life advocated for a more communistic view and then actually got away from race blindness and actually got towards race obsession? I'm totally cool with that. He did some great things, he did some things that were not so great. In America, though, you must understand, he is looked to as the new founding father. The main contention that I have with the Civil Rights Act and the Civil Rights Movement and how it ended, not how it started, is that we refounded the country fundamentally. We cast aside our founding roots and our founding documents, the U.S. Constitution, and we decided to basically usher in the Civil Rights Act as a new anti-racist dogma, creed, and I find something fundamentally wrong with that. Our birth certificate as Americans is the Declaration, and the law of the land is tied with the U.S. Constitution. It was not the Civil Rights Act. And so, with all of that to say, we have a national holiday to MLK. We got rid of a national holiday for our first president and our founding father, George Washington. We used to call it Washington's birthday. Now we call it President's Day in our country. So that's just maybe some context to answer that question.
So you tweeted ahead of the January 6th Capitol attack that Turning Point USA and Students for Trump were sending more than 80 buses of Patriots to DC to fight for this president, although it ended up being 7. Do you see your claims, including that the election was stolen, as contributing to January the 6th?
I mean, it's somewhat of an irrelevant question, but no, of course not. In fact, our students were the ones that didn't even go to the Capitol and peacefully went home. But I mean, how deep into January 6th do you want to get? It wasn't an insurrection by any means whatsoever. There were some people that acted totally improperly, and they should not assault police officers or break windows. But there were also a lot of people that walked into the Capitol building and the doors were open for them, and they walked between the queued lines that were there and said a prayer. And these are the people that walk around with pocket constitutions, and they were smeared in the largest witch hunt and manhunt, I should say, the largest manhunt in American law enforcement history that resulted in 1,300 arrests of non-violent offenders that walked into the People's House in the United States Capitol building, while violent crime rose in almost every major city in the country. And so, I don't know how much, maybe I'm sure there'll be a question on January 6th. So.
You've compared same-sex sexual behavior to drug and alcohol use and described it as an error and said you don't agree with the lifestyle. How would you justify these comments whilst also speaking about welcoming gay people into the conservative movement?
Well, first, we all have flaws, that's number one. But number two, how do I justify it? It doesn't matter what Charlie Kirk believes, that's a view derived from Scripture. And so, the Bible talks very clearly about God's natural order. We see this reflected in the natural law. Some of my closest friends and closest people that work with me alongside Turning Point USA participate in a same-sex lifestyle, and that's their own prerogative. But if you ask me what I believe and why I believe it, it's derived straight from Scripture.
And you've spoken of marriage as between one man and one woman, even whilst polls have consistently shown most Americans as in support of same-sex marriage. How would you respond to critics regarding your position on this?
I don't derive my morality from up or down vote.
How would you respond to criticism that far-right-wing discourse, particularly online, is inflamed by organizations such as Turning Point USA and your rhetoric, even as you condemn attendance of neo-Nazis at your events?
I don't even know how to respond to that. I mean, how do I respond to critics that I'm inflaming tensions? If the truth inflames you, you have a problem. It's not my problem.
How's that feel?
Feels great.
Too much?
Never.
Given his losses, does Mark Kerr still have it in him? Can he still fight with everything he's been through?
No fight, no money?
No money. It's the biggest fight of my life.
I just need you to let me in.
This is a monumental battle here. You wouldn't push me if I were you.
What do you see as the role of an institution such as Turning Point USA in shaping national discourse? And what do you think is next for the organization in terms of what you discuss?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're very known for hopefully what we'll see here, which is respectful dialogue. We have an open mic on campuses. I did over 100 hours of campus debates this semester, seen billions of times around the world. And yeah, look, as far as conservatism, we plan to win. And for the 3 conservatives that are here tonight, I hope you guys get your mojo back. This was once a great country. I want to see it great again. You guys are a husk of your former self. You guys, you can laugh and sneer all you want, but the country that split the atom and invented the steam engine and eradicated slavery and brought common law to the world can do a lot better than this. And your existence led to our existence. And for whatever I can do, I hope that this country finds a leader or a group of leaders. I'm not here to give you political advice. I hate when foreigners do that to Americans. You guys do whatever you want. But I do have a wish that the world feels like it's missing something. It feels like it's missing something when Great Britain or England or whatever politically correct thing I have to say, because I guess England, I can't fly an English flag now or whatever nonsense that is. But be proud of your heritage. You've done good for the world. Stop apologizing. Get your energy, get your vitality, get what made England and made Great Britain such a phenomenal place. I hope you get that back, and I hope that you reject the swan song of multiculturalism and get back to the fundamental truism that a strong Britain means a strong world, and therefore a strong West, and we can stand up for what is good, true, and beautiful.
Would you agree with commentators that your politics have become more conservative in recent years, and what's caused this shift?
Yes. Partially, honestly, getting married and having children, something that I hope all of you do. Getting married and having children is an objective good thing for yourself and for society, and for, of course, your children. The fact that we're having less children in the West is a very alarming trend. And as I got more conservative, as I got married and I started to have a couple kids, I started to realize this is what I'm fighting for. And I understand the threats against their well-being and their livelihood. And then also I got more serious about my faith.
So you've spoken today against affirmative action in educational institutions. How would you propose making excellence in education more equitable for students from disadvantaged backgrounds?
IQ tests.
And do you see equal treatment as possible without considering...
Just so we're clear, IQ tests don't have anything to do with background. I mean, meaning like, okay, if you have somewhat of an equal nutritional capacity, doesn't matter how much you study or you get an IQ, maybe you can get an IQ tutor and boost it by a couple points, but we should bring back IQ tests in the West. Please continue.
I was just going to say, do you see it as possible without considering any external factors for students when applying for higher education, such as economic background?
Well, external factors can be factored in, but affirmative action isn't that. At least in America, I don't know how it works here. Affirmative action in America is, we struck it down to the Supreme Court, thankfully, race-based, which is that a certain melanin content gets you certain points, and a certain melanin content gets you demerits.
Great, we're going to move now to...
Okay, am I stand here?
Yeah,
great.
of the discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can we settle down, please? We're going to move on to our questions. Our first question is from Zinosha Zubair from Sydney, Sussex. Come on, ask the question. Remember, you have the right of response.
I have quite a simple question for you. Now, I know you've debated Dean Withers on Jubilee before. I was wondering why you now refuse to engage with further debate with him.
Wait, hold on. First of all, he's coming on my show this summer, and let me get this straight. I flew 5,000 miles across the world to have you ask why I'm not going to debate a left-wing YouTuber?
Well, I mean, he continuously tries to get your attention at your campus.
Again, he's
just ignore him.
I've debated him twice in the last calendar year. He's coming on my show this summer. Let me be clear, I came to Cambridge to have you ask me that.
I mean, you talk about freedom, and I'm just using my freedom of speech to ask you a simple question. You seem to be dodging it for some reason.
No, I've debated him twice in the last year, and he's coming on this summer for a long-form discussion. But is this what I can expect?
Yeah, he's making videos about you avoiding him on your campus debates.
Right, so let me tell you how this works. I do a campus event, like at Texas A&M University. I rent it out. I'm there for 3 hours. He shows up demanding to come up to the mic immediately, cutting in line of other students. It's not Joe Biden's America anymore, where you can just cut in line and get whatever you Therefore, I say, excuse me, Dean, we'll talk another time. He makes this YouTube video as if I'm scared to debate him, even though I debated him twice in the last year. Does that sufficiently answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next question is from James Loveridge from Anglo-Ruskin University.
So, firstly, thank you for coming here, Charlie. It's nice to meet you. So my question is, I am a conservative and I did back Trump in 2024, but I'm troubled that the GOP refuses to hold him accountable for his personal and legal failings. And how can we claim to stand for moral values and the Constitution while excusing behaviour that we condemn from the left? Isn't it the hypocrisy undermining our credibility, especially with the next generation?
What specifically do you have issue with?
Well, the countless things that he's done.
The what?
Stormy Daniels. You know, the bus interview that he put down to locker room talk. You know, his multiple legal values, filings.
What would you like to see them do? And you voted for this man. So,
no, I can't vote for him.
Whatever, you said you voted, or whatever, I don't know. Plenty of Americans, I don't know, you said you supported him, so...
Yeah.
Is that correct? Maybe I'm putting...
No, that's
you
correct.
supported him, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that. I supported him on some of his policies and him, but a lot of conservatives, I'm not saying you personally, but a lot of conservatives refuse to call him out or critique him on anything and will ignore that straight away.
I mean, I critique him. He's a friend of mine. I mean, I critique him. I don't think Canada should be the 51st state. We have enough liberals in America.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Our next question is from Kai Bevan at Trinity Hall.
Right, so thank you for coming, Charlie. My question to you, I mean, I'm a medical student, and I'm going to throw out the big A word. I know you get asked about it a lot, but I want to hear from you what your opinion is on abortion.
Life begins at conception.
But about abortion specifically, why do you think abortion is wrong specifically?
Well, you agree murder is wrong.
I agree. Okay, so this is where we get to the question, right? Because what is it about murder you say is wrong? Like, why is murder wrong?
Well, because it's a human being, not just because it has consciousness or because it's of a certain age, because it's a human.
Well, what is it that gives human being this moral worth?
Not its consciousness necessarily.
I didn't say it's consciousness.
I know that. I can imagine it's because it is a human being, because that is a soul.
And what is this soul? Where does this come from? This idea that it's...
Exactly. I mean, again, the Greeks postulated that it is the entirety of your being. Okay, you guys can laugh. I mean, it's true. I mean, every civilization has had a different belief, but agreed upon ethical monotheism, which is the creed of the West and what the birth certificate of my country articulates, that every human being is more than just matter, it's more than just a clump of cells, but it also has an invisible element to you that will live beyond you.
Fine, so, I mean, can
He
you
said,
say
fine,
that from the
so-
Bible, or where else do you get that?
Ethical monotheism, which is the creed of the West. And again, the Declaration of Independence mentions God 4 times. The founders were explicitly believed, not in a secular morality, but a divinely given one, of at least this idea that there is a God and you are not him. And let me ask you, what is the first stage of human development?
So the first, I mean, this is the thing, right? We can take it from the sperm being generated in the father and the oocyte being generated in the mother, right? They fuse at birth, conception, sorry. The only thing that happens at conception is these 2 cells fuse.
No, DNA is created. The zygote.
It's not created.
A DNA, no, that's not true. The DNA coding of the zygote. Hold on, time out. Does a zygote have a unique marker?
Charlie,
does a zygote have a unique marker?
Let me speak. You have
to answer it, yes or no. Does a zygote have a unique marker?
Define a unique marker.
I mean, can you differentiate the DNA coding between the mother and the zygote if you examine it under a deoxyribonucleic acid analysis? Can you?
Only purely because the addition comes from the father.
Oh, so it is something different.
Charlie, DNA is not created. DNA is not created. You have, the father has his own genome, the mother has her own genome. They fuse. This is why you have the same characteristics, similar ones to your mother, similar ones to your father. That's why you have similar characteristics to your siblings. DNA is not created, right? So when you ask me, where does a human being come from? I can say to you, it starts at conception, but all conception is 2 cells joining, right? But these 2 cells were created, the mother's cells were created long before, they were created when she was a fetus. So there's none of this DNA being produced, right? So we can't establish. The only thing that happens at conception is these two cells fuse. Now this idea that means that for some reason suddenly that moral worth comes in, but it wasn't there before when you had these 2 cells who had half the DNA. But suddenly there's
correct. Yes, something magical happens at that.
It's not magical, Charlie. We know about this.
Well, hold on.
Charlie,
time out. Hold on.
I promise you, I'm not trying to score points. I'm not trying to score points on you. This is genuine.
We call it the miracle of life for a reason. We've not been able to yet replicate human life development outside of the womb.
We call it the miracle of life because yes, it's something beautiful, the ability to form a new human.
Magical.
It's not. You say magical as in, oh, it's beautiful, it's an incredible thing that happens, of course. But it's not incredible in the sense we don't know what's going on. There's no new DNA coming out of nowhere.
Hold on, but time on. Isn't there a separate DNA though than the mother?
Yes, from the father.
Okay, yes, but it's not the father's DNA either. A new coding is created,
Charlie,
or a blend of the 2. And so when did your life begin?
Okay, so
when did your life?
I mean, again, this comes from what you define as where life starts. You can say life starts at conception, but I'm telling you, I believe that's just an arbitrary point, right? That's just the moment these 2 cells fuse. Now you say about this mother thing. So the way DNA is arranged in a cell is it's arranged in chromosomes. Chromosomes are paired up, so you have one from the mother, one from the father, typically in a healthy individual, right? Now, you can take those maternal chromosomes out and you can find that this is who the person's mother is, and you can do the same with the father. Now, the reason you are different to your mother and father is because some of those chromosomes express genes that are different from each other, and so those genes interact, and that's what gives rise to you, right? But there's no space for any kind of moral framework to come into that until you consider that a human being is capable of consciousness and of suffering. But if you take that out of the equation, the fact that these two DNA, whatever they call molecules, right? These two DNA molecules are fusing, that does not suddenly flip a switch that attributes moral worth to that individual.
Why would they be clapping for that? It's retarded.
I'm just saying, I'm not trying to score points.
By what moral standard do you believe that?
I believe that if an individual is capable of suffering, then it's wrong. Now, can I explain my opinion on abortion, just so you can understand? I would agree, as many reasonable people would, that at 9 months, it's unreasonable to expect someone to get an abortion, right? Unless you have some extreme circumstances. But for an elective abortion seems a bit radical.
At 9 months, it wouldn't be an abortion. It would be murder. It'd be murder either way. But at 9 months, that's ridiculous.
Deny her of an abortion also seems wrong to me, because that zygote is not capable of suffering, as far as we know.
Oh God.
So by what moral standard? Is that just your opinion? Where did you get that moral standard from?
Because suffering is a bad thing. We all know suffering is a bad thing. That's an objective fact, right?
Hold on. So you do believe in objective morality?
I believe that suffering is an objectively negative.
So if you can't feel it, is it okay?
Download now.
What do you mean if you
can't feel the pain, is it okay to inflict the pain?
In the sense that if no one's suffering from it, if you have a scenario where nobody is suffering from something, then yes, of course. Something is only a moral question if it affects someone's well-being.
So let me just make sure I understand this correctly. That if it doesn't affect their well-being, so dementia patients that don't know who they are or where they're from, can we execute dementia patients because they're confused about their well-being?
Can you imagine a scenario?
Or Alzheimer's patients.
Charlie.
Alzheimer's patients don't really know much about anything. Can we schedule them for execution because they can't technically suffer?
No response. So can you imagine a scenario where we lived in a society where we killed people when they suffered from dementia, were incapable of suffering, and we killed them, right? It's not a scenario that involves an absence of suffering. There's still suffering involved. Imagine you grow up thinking, my dad could be killed at any moment because he's going to get dementia. Imagine living your life thinking, I could get dementia and suddenly I'd be killed by my state.
Imagine a world where you slaughter 1 million babies every year in America.
But Charlie, it's not slaughter, that's the problem.
Hold on, it's a forcible removal from the umbilical cord of another human life. Again, we have clarity but not agreement. Biologically, you know that your entire coding began at conception. Your coding, or uniqueness.
I disagree with that.
Okay, when those two cells fused together, to use your terminology, yes, that is where the process of
scientifically accepted terminology.
In the interest of time, can we bring this question to a close?
The process of human development objectively begins at that moment. Therefore, those human beings are deserving of human rights. We keep going, or do you want to?
No, thank you. Yeah, you can finish.
The process of development begins from the moment the sperm is being generated in the father, the moment the eggs are being generated in the mother. To say that suddenly the moral worth switches on when they fuse doesn't make any sense. That's just a point you make.
It makes perfect sense, because that is when your journey as a human being. When the sperm and egg were separate, you were not yet a fused human being. You were not created uniquely.
DNA existed. DNA existed. I thought.
Well, no, the parts of your DNA existed. Your DNA did not exist. It's like saying that we have a full car just because we have all the parts. It was not yet put together until conception happens and the zygote was formed. Thank you. I think we have to get
move on to the next question, please. Thank you. Our fourth question tonight is from Rudy Ellis-Jones from Emmanuel College.
Hello, thank you for coming to today's talk. So my question, as someone studying archaeology and biological anthropology, I've learned that moral codes and social norms have always been fluid, shaped by time, culture, power. So many ancient and recent societies embrace same-sex relationships and even the idea of third genders well before Western conservatism even existed. So when you claim that modern conservative values represent some kind of universal, objective moral truth, like you said on your chair over there, aren't you just defending a selective, historically recent ideology that erases most of human history and targets people who've always been part of it?
No, but can you point to me of a... And maybe you can educate me. Can you point to me a great power that endorsed same-sex marriage? Not cohabitation, but marriage.
Ancient Mesopotamia.
As marriage. As recognized.
It's marriage and it's
recognized by the state. 100%. And how did that work out for them?
It worked out perfectly fine. It was an accepted norm of society.
Okay, I still think it's wrong.
Okay, swiftly moving on. So you said it was based on scripture and you believe that there are moral, objective, universal truths.
Yes, there are.
So
murder is wrong today and murder was wrong 2,000 years ago.
Right, okay, fair. That's not same-sex, but fair. I see your point. But
there are moral truths that are transcendent of time, place, and matter.
Okay, but so just to clarify, you believe that this is in the Bible. This is laid out in the Bible that man shall not sleep with man, and so therefore...
Well, it's also repeated throughout the New Testament as well. In the book of Matthew, Jesus reaffirms the biblical standard for marriage.
Okay, so I'm going to make two very, very quick points. So the first, so if we look at the Old Testament in isolation, just to start off with as an example, so let's look at Exodus 35:2, which suggests that if you work on the Sabbath, you should be put to death. If you look at Leviticus 11:7, it suggests that if you have pork, you should be put to death. If you plant two crops side by side, you should be stoned by your entire village. If you wear a suit, which you are wearing now, that contains two different fibers intertwined into the same jacket, you should be burned to the stake by your own mother. Now, following that rationale, in Leviticus 18:22, when it states that man shall not sleep with man, why aren't we burning ourselves at the stake as well? Why aren't we stoning ourselves to death?
There are always two sides to a story.
You pissed off the wrong people.
Welcome to Roku. Roku makes every part of the TV experience better, including the ads. You get massive reach across multiple streaming apps and channels, all in one place, so you can reach your audience wherever they stream.
It's easier than ever with Ads Manager, Roku's self-serve ads platform.
Bottom line, better TV for everyone means better advertising for you. Ready to get started? Sign up today.
Do you care to address my main contention that Christ affirmed biblical marriage in the book of Matthew? And can you tell me the difference between the ceremonial, the moral, and the ritual law? And then finally, also, tell me about Christianity, the difference between the New and the Old Covenant, or are you just going to cherry pick certain verses of ancient Israel that do not apply to New Christianity?
In fact, I can believe it. So we'll look at 2 points then. So firstly, if we look at the Old Testament, we can see the kind of inconsistencies there. We've already touched upon that, right? That makes sense. Second, you mentioned the point of Jesus and Christ. He never mentioned anything to do with homosexuality at all.
Well, hold on a second about it. He affirmed biblical marriage as one man and one woman. He said a man shall leave his
Romans, right? In the New Testament.
No, in Matthew, that is not correct. I believe.
In the New Testament.
In the New Testament. Well, Romans is also in the New Testament. Secondly, in Romans 1, the Apostle Paul talks negatively about homosexuality explicitly. Also, homosexuality is repeated in the book of Titus and in the book of Jude as not being favorable as the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Not even talking about the Old Testament verses. There are 3 types of the 613 Levitical laws, and you know, of course, in your own way, cherry pick some of them. We do not live under the ceremonial, we do not live under the ritual, but we do live under the moral. There's only 10 of the moral that we as Christians believe we're bound to. Some believe 9, which of course is the Decalogue. And so none of those that you mentioned we as Christians believe that we live under. However, we do look at what Christ articulated as the biblical standard of marriage. And we can also look to church tradition for this as well. And the church has had a tradition for well over 2,000 years. Even myself as a Protestant acknowledges that tradition is marriage between one man and one woman.
And in fact, but okay, say we put aside the Old Testament for now. We'll put that aside and the inconsistencies there. We'll go at the New Testament following your rationale, okay? Now, when you say that Christ lays specifically, and the New Testament states specifically that man shall not sleep with man, I'd like to point out a linguistic error on that point.
I did not say that. I said the biblical marriage was affirmed, and then Romans 1 did talk negatively about the action of homosexuality.
But ultimately, that affirmation comes from 8 lines in there that suggest that man shall not sleep with man.
Yes, of course, yes. Because the Old Testament and New Testament harmonize one another, but Christ brought it to a different level, a different covenant, and a different moral teaching. It wasn't just enough to say that you shall, man shall strike eye for eye, so that you shall turn the other cheek, that you shall love your enemy. Christ's moral standard was much more even elevated than that of the Israelites and the Hebrews.
I'm going to ask you whose Bible, okay? Now, your Bible that you use currently is written in the English language, right? Correct?
Yeah, the King James Version, yes, thanks to Tyndale.
Well, exactly, it's written in the English language, which in itself is only, say, 500 years old. Now, but the Christianity in itself, say, is 2,000 years old or even older, yeah? Correct? Now, which means that the Bible was originally written not in English, but in ancient
Koine Greek.
Huh?
In Koine Greek.
Yeah, correct. Now, if we look at the Greek terminology of man...
Yes, and Jesus spoke Aramaic. You could translate things, you acknowledge that.
Well, we translate things, but translations are linguistically ambiguous. As a former classicist, I know that language can't be translated directly. So, for example, if we look at the translation of certain words into man, so I've got 2 words here. So I've got malakoi, which means essentially soft, which isn't necessarily directly saying a gay man. And then we've got, oh God, how do I say that? Arsena koitai, which essentially means prostitutes. Now, if we look at things linguistically, we can pick apart the Bible and say that actually, it wasn't saying man shall not sleep with man, it's saying man shall not sleep with prostitutes, which is an entirely different linguistic thing.
I'm not even getting into Leviticus, though.
But no,
my contention is completely New Testament focused.
This isn't Leviticus.
Well, but you said man shall not speak of the man. So you're talking about Romans.
Well, okay, these words are used throughout the entire
Well, actually, in Romans 1, it was actually women sleeping with women. So you got your verses wrong. In Romans 1, Paul is prophesying about the end of the world, and he's saying that in the end times, woman will like with woman like, and man will. I think it might say man will like men like. You have to get the verses specifically, but it is agreed upon, and you can agree. This is why tradition is important, and I even say this as a Protestant, is that we believe that Scripture is very important, but also look to tradition. Church tradition has had an unbroken chain affirming matrimony, holy matrimony being one man, one woman. One, even as a non-Catholic, I'm glad that Pope Leo has reaffirmed in the last couple of days. And so I'm not even sure your contention, your point. Are you saying that the Bible doesn't affirm marriage as one man, one woman? Or are you saying church tradition doesn't affirm marriage one man, one woman?
The Bible doesn't affirm.
Yeah,
Well, clearly doesn't affirm.
That is completely nonsense.
It's not. It's a linguistic error. And it gets debated.
But Christ our Lord, which is the standard, he affirms this idea that you will leave your father's home. Going back to Genesis 12, and this idea of Abraham leaving his father's home, and you will cleave to your wife. That they'll be called one. In fact, this idea of a new creation, which is something that is then used by the Apostle Paul to describe the church of Christ and the bride of the church, and the church being the bride of Christ with Jesus. So I'm not even sure your contention. It is.
But you're just avoiding my point. I'm saying the Bible that we have today is 100% a translation, and a translation
I acknowledge
is ambiguous.
Well, hold on. But what about specifically in Matthew or in the book of Romans? But in order for you to be correct, you mean the church fathers translated it wrong when they were within like 50 years of this. In order for your contention to be correct, you have to say that the early church fathers that wrote the early letters to the church, they were translating it wrong, and the tradition they established was wrong. So by then we can lean on tradition and scripture. So when you get tradition plus scripture, you get something that is authentic, that is real, and that is verifiable.
I've already highlighted that tradition does not align with scripture. We've gone back thousands of years to ancient Mesopotamia.
But understand, but at the time, they all spoke Greek, they wrote Greek, and they spoke Aramaic. So, for example, when they were writing the early Gospels, the Synoptic Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they were obviously writing in Greek. They knew that language. So in Matthew, when they were writing Greek, and then the early church fathers knew Greek and adopted that as church tradition, we have a 2,000 unbroken chain, I think you would irrefutably say that it was the teachings of Christ for one man and one woman. Because the church tradition has been unbroken for 2,000 years, and they derived it from scripture of that original language.
You can't argue that. That makes sense. I mean, if we agree to disagree, then when we look at...
So you know better than the church fathers?
No, I don't. I'm not saying I know better than the church fathers. What I'm saying is, linguistically, there is undeniably an error. Regardless of what you say, that is...
Our lens, maybe, but not from the people when they were making these traditions.
I agree. They may have got that right, but that may not have been their original meaning. What we're saying is the meaning has been warped over time because societal and cultural context, such as the British Empire.
Please start bringing this question to a close,
It
please.
can be, but that is why tradition matters. Because the tradition, they understood the context.
Tradition is context dependent.
Well, yes and no, because of course tradition is, but if the tradition lasts for 2,000 years, then we look back as to how did they get to that conclusion? How did they reach that verdict? And if that verdict is in alignment with what we see in Scripture, it means that their verdict was correct in Scripture.
They never reached that verdict, as I have historically pointed out.
In all of the major church councils, it was very
modern day.
Well, no, I'm talking about like 300 and 400 and 500. The original
in the scale of 2,000 years is nothing.
But they set this unbroken chain. We've had an unbroken chain in a course that says that marriage is one man and one woman. The church has never wavered on this.
Noted by the British Empire under British form of Christianity.
I'm talking all the way back to like 200 or 300. The idea of biblical Christianity goes back to the early times of the church when it was a scattered, persecuted church well before King Justinian and well before the Eastern Roman Empire, well before mass conversion. When it was a persecuted church, the church believed in one man, one woman, because they got it from the scripture itself. We want to keep going, or?
Can we move on to the next question, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Damzit Wimalasena from Lucy Cavendish College. Thank you.
Hello, Charlie. Thank you for being here. Just before I start with my question, I wanted to address something you said earlier on sort of Western Christian values being the reason for the abolishment of slavery globally. I'm not sure whether you know this. I've seen you repeating this quite often. I'm a practicing Buddhist, and it was actually Buddhism, Buddhist emperors, Emperor Ashoka of India, who first abolished slavery globally. So I would sort of ask you to sort of look at other sort of...
I will look into that. You did it globally? They had that much, the Buddhists had that much span of influence?
Oh, within India.
Okay, I'll look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. So first of all, my first question, or my only question is, you've advocated and applauded the reducing and removing of public funding for universities on the grounds they promote ideological biases. Given that universities play a critical role in driving national innovation, research and upward mobility, especially through federally funded grants, how do you reconcile this position with the broader societal value that higher education institutes offer?
Well, they can, but in Harvard's case, for example, who's getting their funding pulled, they have a $50 billion endowment. Just so we are clear, in pounds, that would be like what, 42 billion, 45 billion? I mean, I'm trying to learn the conversion rate here. I mean, it's an extraordinary amount of money. They can either use their endowments to fund it, and if you have certain behavior and certain practices, then you should not get federal funding. Harvard is in direct violation of the United States Supreme Court fair admissions case, which says you cannot discriminate people based on the color of their skin. Go ahead.
But isn't the whole point of it, you can't use endowments like that. The point of it...
Well, they can.
The point of an endowment is to manage a fund through perpetuity. Cambridge has an endowment, and that endowment allows professorships to be funded to allow for research into sciences. That's the whole point of it.
You just said, hold on, you just said it funds research into sciences. That's what they should do with their monstrosity of an endowment.
Yeah, but the endowment is...
The interest alone in their endowment could fund the entire research and development budget of most Ivy League schools. They have a $50 billion endowment. Even like a podunk money manager in America can earn a 7 to 10% investment in the markets the last couple of years. That's $5 billion of returns that endowment could then reinvest in whatever they want. Instead, Harvard has become a hedge fund with a radical school attached. And I think that's very wrong for US taxpayers to continue to subsidize.
But it's not just Harvard. You've called on colleges being a scam. You've constantly attacked higher education institutes. You've attacked liberal arts as a scam. For example, like a lot of conservatives, Peter Thiel studied philosophy at Stanford. Ronald Reagan studied sociology. A lot of them did study liberal arts, and you keep undermining these august institutions, which have provided a lot for society. Like society's backbones have been universities and higher learning institutes, and yet you keep attacking them.
Well, they used to be largely, but again, I don't want to speak too much about this country, but in America, they don't represent fundamental American values. You know, Peter Thiel, after he graduated Stanford, wrote an entire book criticizing college and then paying people not to go to college. So Peter Thiel, who spoke at this very school, and you guys had a great conversation with him, do you know that he believes college is such a scam? He would pay people $100,000 a year for 20 years straight not to go to college. So not exactly a good argument in your favor. Peter Thiel, who got a philosophy degree, made billions of dollars, and has now forked over tens of millions of dollars for people not to go to US universities and colleges.
Yeah, but it's not just Peter Thiel.
I know, but you mentioned him, I didn't. But to complete the point, is that...
Yes, Thomas went to did liberal arts.
Look, in America, there are far too many people going to college. We need people to become welders, electricians, people that work with their hands. There is a major trade deficit problem in the United States. We have 11 million well-paying jobs that we cannot find enough labor for, and instead we have a lot of people going to university to go study North African lesbian poetry. It might sound good, but it doesn't necessarily, A, either development of the content, the character, or the development of the soul, and B, it does not necessarily also give you the skills necessary. Some college is good for you. I'm a big proponent of Hillsdale College.
Guys, can you please be quiet?
I believe Hillsdale College is America's greatest college, and I'm a big proponent of that. But I would ask the question, in your own words, what do you believe the purpose of college is?
It's critical engagement, but coming back to your point on lesbian poetry or whatever.
North African lesbian poetry.
North African lesbian poetry. So in the morning I actually had a lecture on development policy, and one of the key authors on sort of development economics is Nussbaum, who talks about how liberal arts sort of engages you critically. And one could argue, even North African lesbian poetry, I don't think that's a degree, I think that's just a module within a degree.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Who's the new guy?
Lead Dev.
Keeps himself on.
Yeah, but he's supposed to be good. And our app needs an API that,
Works.
right.
I don't know what he's doing. He keeps everything locked away in his own repo. He's not the only one building APIs here. I have a job to do, and he's not letting me do it.
We're not hitting our launch date.
We're hitting it.
I can't move forward until I know how the API works. We're gonna slip.
We're not gonna slip.
That makes you...
The fact you don't know shows how rotten to the core universities have become.
You're taking one example and telling conservatives and hordes of young people that college is a scam. College isn't a scam. I mean, I took my mom down to a pub just down the road where Watson and Crick announced DNA. If college is a scam, then DNA wouldn't have been discovered. With cancer research...
Hold on a second. Yes, you're right. At this specific university, you guys split the atom. You had Sir Isaac Newton. You had some of the greatest minds of the West. I don't know about what's happening here, and I'm not going to criticize it. But at most colleges in the West, they have gone away from place of inquiry and appreciation of what is good and what is beautiful and into this incessant oppression Olympics of trying to deconstruct the core canon that is our birth certificate. I don't know if that's happening here. It's certainly...
That's not true, though.
In America, it is objectively true, okay?
That isn't true.
Okay, no, first of all, they removed Western civilization as a core course in Stanford in the 1990s. They tried to bring it back with petitions, and the university said, no, teaching Western civilization is racist. Shakespeare is not taught at major... Let me finish. Shakespeare is not taught at major universities across America because it's deemed as racist. I talked to some students earlier in the English department, and they said, hey, I'm studying Shakespeare. I said, that's refreshing because in a lot of U.S. schools, they don't teach Shakespeare because he's called racist. You would be surprised at how wretched to the core some of these colleges have become in America.
If you look at the Global Innovation Index, America, which is predominantly a lot of their majors are in humanities and liberal arts, they're number 2 on the Global Innovation Index. China is somewhere near 13. If you look at every metric, Fortune 1000 CEOs, 40% did humanities and liberal arts. There is a value in liberal arts, yet you're criticizing...
Yes, and I'm going to keep on criticizing it. Also, the vast majority of liberal arts graduates do not respect freedom of speech. That is an empirical poll. They increasingly do not have reverence or gratitude for the United States of America. They don't care about the core values of the U.S. Constitution. If you want to go to college, that's fine. But in our country, 40% of kids that enter college do not graduate. The kids that do graduate, half of them end up getting jobs that do not require any sort of college degree. There are all these made-up degrees. In America, I know it's different than the experience you might be having here. Your tutoring system here is objectively great. I'm glad you guys have it. The class sizes in America are 400 to 500 students, sometimes per introductory course, to go hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt, study things that don't matter, find jobs that do not exist. And so let me just make one final point, is that, of course, some people should be going to college, but generally in the United States of America, it has become a racket of debt, it has become a burden, and a place where we're actually not putting our best and brightest into the job field itself to be equipped for the jobs of the future. Instead, we have a lot of baristas at Starbucks with philosophy degrees.
You also mentioned indoctrination. As per the Oxford Dictionary's definition of indoctrination, it means that you take a belief and you can't critically observe that belief. Turning Point USA has over 30,000 chapters, 3,000 chapters across US universities. So are you arguing that students, including conservatives, lack the critical thinking skills to sort of decide political ideologies, political beliefs, that they're so dumbfounded that they can't decide for themselves what's right and what's wrong, and that your whole premise is on the fact that students like us, we lack critical thought in deciding what is taught in schools?
Again, I'm not using Cambridge as the school that I think of, but in America, we have millions of people that go to these massive state schools that have humanities departments that are not reading the great books, that do not have a tutoring system, that are unfortunately laced with the most anti-Western thought imaginable. I don't really quite following what one thing has to do with the other, why 3,000 chapters has something to do with your indictment. Maybe you can clarify, but I think we're out of time.
You can clarify,
but in general, colleges should be a place that lift you up to what is good, true, and beautiful. To study the great things that have been, to develop your soul and develop your character. Character in Greek literally means like tattoo, to etch within you. Far too often colleges create ungrateful, pessimistic, and nihilistic revolutionaries that want to tear down what was before and instead have no alternative to build the future, and the West is suffering because of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I disagree. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next question is from Archie McIntosh at Jesus College.
It's good to meet you, Charlie. I hope you can understand the first rule. I'm a little nervous. There's a very real chance I could wake up tomorrow, front page of YouTube. Charlie Kirk owns man bun idiot with facts and logic. So
destroys.
Yeah, destroys. Okay, so my question is, I agree that stable monogamous relationships often produce the best outcomes for society, but if that structure really works for everyone, why do we consistently see societies, once they become safer and more prosperous, move away from traditional monogamy? And why do so many marriages still end in divorce, even among people who generally try to make it work? And just one final framing there. If you believe in free markets because they are decentralized and they adapt to reality without top-down control, and given the individual ability to form healthy long-term pair bonds very significantly with factors like genetics and ecologically calibrated attachment styles, why do you reject top-down control in economics, but not extend that same rejection to human behavior in terms of marriage?
Okay, so the first one, the second law of thermodynamics answers your question, is that it's the law of decay. Societies tend to decay against the roots that created them. For example, as a side note, here in this country, you guys invented the idea of free speech. You brought it to the world. You guys do not have free speech in this country anymore. 30 people a day are arrested in the UK for inflammatory social media posts. Someone by the name of Lucy Connolly is currently facing prison time for a Facebook post that was critical of migrants. It is normal, unfortunately, for civilizations to get away from how they once operated and how they once were. Now, to your question, does that answer the first part of your question? You were saying, why do they get away from monogamy? I want to make sure I'm answering your question.
I would say I don't feel that that's a full answer.
Okay, so you're asking why do they get away from what works? Is that correct?
Yes. Well, why do societies make this change once they become more prosperous?
Oh yeah, okay. I mean, because prosperity leads to degeneracy, for sure. That would be the answer. And so once you are prosperous, you tend to no longer have the moral guardrails or the limitations that let's just say, you no longer have delayed gratification because you have instant gratification because you have a surplus of goods, and then you have a decline of a transcendent moral order. The second part of the question, can you remind me, please, what the second question was? About markets?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, for example, I believe in intervention in markets if there is something that is improper morally. So, for example, I do not believe that you should be able to scam your neighbor or have misleading advertising because I believe in a transcendent moral standard, and the same goes for my personal views on marriage.
Okay, so I think we largely agree on the foundation. I'd like to propose something you might like to think about. So, firstly, I absolutely acknowledge that, again, if everyone in society was able to maintain healthy long-term pair bonds, that would be best. Again, there's strong data showing that independent of socioeconomic factors, broken homes are some of the strongest predictors of poor life outcomes.
We totally agree.
Yes. And even, I'm not sure if many people are aware of this, but if you track, as countries become more socially egalitarian, somewhat surprisingly, rates of female depression and anxiety also spike disproportionately. So I think one of the problems here is that when you try and impose moral absolutism, inevitably, again, due to variance in attachment issues, due to industrialized culture, absent parents, screens, raising kids, around 50% of adults in the West develop attachment disorders, which make it very difficult to maintain long-term pair bonds. And then additionally, you have things like variation in oxytocin receptors, density and shape, also invasive present. There are going to be, even though there's 5% of people who feel that these rules really do not fit them, they will push back. And this will create ideologies that then grow into more wider appealing ideologies, which then, leads to the change. I think this is what happened in the sexual revolution. It started with a push for female autonomy, and then it was almost morphed into a really exaggerated expression of pushing for maximizing individual freedom. And I think that when you try and impose moral absolutism this way, it just inevitably causes pushback. And I think if you were to, as someone with a platform, instead say, hey, monogamy is great, it works best for most people, but I also understand there are some people it doesn't work so well for, more people would hear the message that you want to push.
Okay, thank you for that. That's an interesting, I've actually never gotten that question before. It's very thoughtful. Would you say you're against moral absolutism then?
Yes, I would.
Are you against that absolutely?
No, I'm very open to having my mind changed, and
so it's not an absolute thing.
Well, I'm against moral absolutism.
Are you against moral absolutism? Absolutely.
No.
Okay, so then you're consistent. So then
I think
it's all just kind of. I think it's preference, not. It's about preference. And you can just basically do whatever you prefer. There is no transcendent moral order.
Well, I think what you're doing now is slightly unfairly putting me into a loop, because I'm very open to having my mind changed.
So that's what I'm saying, though, is that by definitionally, and this is something that will keep on coming back, you must choose what moral standard we live by. I'm very clear as to what moral standard. The lie of the West, of modernity, the last 30 years, is that we're going to have you live and let live, and there will be no moral standard. That itself is a moral standard, and it's a really bad one. And to your point, that yes, it creates more suffering, it creates more despair. And no, I disagree with what you say, and I respect the heart of which you're saying it. I will say that I have a moral obligation not to accommodate when people fall short, but instead try to lift them up towards the standard that is true and that I know that works.
So where I'd push this is I'd ask you describe people falling short when they fail to engage in long-term monogamy. What do you think causes that? Why do you think some people struggle?
Many reasons. Economic is one of them, but the biggest is the death of religion and the death of Christianity in the West. As America, I'll just talk about America. The UK is unfortunately far less churched than America. But as America has become less churched, so many of these social ills rise.
So one thing I'd say, I study the evolution of behavior, in particular sexual romantic behavior. If you track all the different hunter-gatherer cultures that we can study, and we track how agriculture shapes things, you see that ecological conditions really reliably predict the prevalence of monogamy, certain marriage systems. And what I think is what we refer to as attachment issues. They seem to be an ecological calibration to an environment. In environments that are more unstable, it's less optimal for an individual to grow up with a tendency to rely on long-term pair bonds. And I think there's a mismatch with the modern world, again, coming back to industrialization. There are so many people who raise kids as absent parents. Daycare is massively linked to attachment issues. This then causes people to struggle to bond long-term. And then again, coming back to the genetic part, there's again, real research showing that especially vasopressin mutations and oxytocin mutations, some people really just do not have the proclivity for this.
What brings stability? Because you say stability is a good thing, and what would bring stability?
So first of all, I would say we had what you might consider stability in the previous century, and then it became unstable. And then things like, I'm saying because moral absolutism was imposed.
Moral absolutism was lost. You see, modernity rose. We started to teach our kids moral relativism and we got rid of moral absolutes. So it's the opposite.
So why was it lost? Was it lost because people stopped pushing for
Start bringing this
top-down?
question to a close.
Why was it lost? That's a question for far smarter minds. I can only tell you that it was. In America, it's honestly one of the worst decisions, not just worst ideas ever, which is modern feminism, largely from Betty Friedan's feminist mystique, which acted as if every woman who's in a monogamous marriage in the States is in some sort of tyrannical environment. And it has led to the women of the West being the most miserable, most depressed, most suicidal, most prescription drug addicted cohort on the planet. And I think we need to appropriately challenge feminism and tell young women that it's okay, in fact, it's courageous to get married and have children again. I think it would solve a lot of our problems.
Well, I've been told to.
Thank you very much.
Very, very, thank you.
Our next question is from Tilly Middlehurst at Fitzwilliam College.
So I'm a feminist. My question is about the role of women, though. What should women's role in public and private life look like, and what are the material benefits of that?
Well, thank you for that. Can I take it? I don't even want to take this detour, but can we both agree on what a woman is?
Yes. An adult human female is a biological state of being that is also socially experienced. Can I please elucidate just one example of that social experience?
Yeah, I was going to answer your question, but sure, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So let's say you're a member of a tribe, and that in that tribe, you have the biological female anatomy, and in order to become a woman in that tribe, you have to also get a tattoo. That's a social experience that's mapped onto biological reality.
So can a woman have a prostate?
Can a woman have a prostate? Biologically speaking, a woman is an adult human female that has a biological reality, but it's also social experience, right? So I don't...
Yeah, it's super easy. Like, can a woman have a prostate?
So as per my definition of woman, I would say that people who have a prostate are biologically male, but they can sometimes be socially treated as women.
Okay, got it. So women can have prostates. Got it. Okay. So you're a feminist that actually isn't just fighting for women, you're also fighting for men.
So, yes, men also experience harms from patriarchy, but I argue...
We're talking about the same feminism, though, just make sure. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So, men also experience harms from patriarchal domination, but I would argue that those harms come from that system of domination itself. In the same way, for example, this isn't a threat, but if I reached across and punched you in the face, then my hand might hurt. Right? So, are we understanding that there are, patterns of power? So, I would also fight for the rights of men as a feminist, just as I would fight for the rights of women.
Sure. You think women are happier than they were 40 years ago?
I think I would have a few responses to that. I think that women report more stress and dissatisfaction today because, not because they have more rights or because of feminism, but because they're under dual pressure to both excel professionally and also because of the domestic labor in homes that is structured around outdated expectations. So, for example, studies like the OECD's Better Life Index show that women's life expectancy, education levels, professional achievements have risen in countries with higher gender inequality. So I would argue that what you're calling unhappiness is actually visibility, because now we hear women expressing dissatisfaction, whereas in the 50s, we prescribed them Valium and we lobotomized.
Yeah. That's really rich. I didn't know women not to complain 50 years ago. That's funny. Hold on a second. Why are suicide rates going up more for women?
I think that
They're not complaining. Materially, women are killing themselves more. Why is that?
I think that even if both men and women have become unhappier, men's suicide rates have risen as well, and that's also been exponential. Can you at least concede that feminism offers only one potential explanation? There could be also other explanations.
Of course, obviously, but feminism is the glaring thing in front of us, where we have fertility rates down, we have marriage rates down, we have unhappiness up, and we did something in the 1960s out of the universities of Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem and all these feminists that basically said, you're trapped in a home, go get a job, freeze your eggs, take birth control, and all of a sudden women are way unhappier than they were 40 years ago. And I just have to ask the question, Why is that? Is it working? And maybe there are biological differences between men and women that we should respect, and that deep down a lot of women want to get married and have children. In fact, we should applaud it, and we should support it, and we should say it means nothing if you're gonna go be a CEO of some shoe company or be some banker in London. What matters if you raise children and you have something to pass down long after you're gone.
I think I would bring 2 points to that. The first one is just really simple, which is that you can ascribe liberalism all you want as the cause of the unhappiness. I would argue something else. I would say that it's certain economic policy that has very little to do with the social acceptance of alternative lifestyles. I would say that we can recognize that income inequality across a vast swathe of Western countries has increased, which causes all kinds of social ills, a lack of social cohesion, housing price growth doesn't correspond with wage growth, monopolies increasingly become kind of emboldened to interfere with politics, and monopolies don't prioritize social health either. I think that those offer more compelling reasons for a decline in happiness than an increase in freedoms, because just one more thing, on an intuitive basis, generally speaking, people want more freedom, not less.
Okay, so if that's true, why is it, do you agree that the happiest women in the West are married with kids?
I would have to look into it, but I think there are certain
and objectively we know that, right? The women with kids are not the ones tearing down statues, right? They're the ones that actually have obligations.
Does tearing down statues correspond to some kind of smiles per capita data set that I wasn't aware of?
Again, it's like, it's a little bit of a one-liner. But the happy and the grateful usually don't go burn down Wendy's in their spare time, of which we saw in our country all throughout a single summer. But as a side note, you would agree, objectively, study after study, survey after survey, that the women of the West that are married and have children, especially a lot of children, are far happier than even the ones that earn more money correlated at the same age.
So I also don't think that happiness is a very good metric, and neither do you, because you think gay people shouldn't just pursue happiness by being gay. They have other moralistic considerations to be making. So I don't think smiles per capita is a particularly convincing way to measure whether or not we should encourage women to be autonomous. I think we should maximize agency within a fair system that has reasonable parameters, because it's expedient, it's good for the economy, it's logical, it's the moral thing, because if we can't prove the material harms, we shouldn't discourage it. And also self-reported studies is a really flawed way to do psychology. It's the week before my university exams right now, and I'm standing here explaining the basic methodology behind survey collection in sociology, which you don't even think is a real subject, to Charlie Kirk. If I took one of those surveys right now, I'd check extremely miserable. But so would a Palestinian child who's been torn to smithereens. How are we going to measure?
You would say extremely miserable?
No, I'm kind of making a joke.
No, I mean, but seriously, like, but hold on. I mean, like, that's an important point, though, is that the women in the West have it the best in the world, and yet they're way unhappier than women of sub-Saharan Africa. There's something fundamentally wrong here. Because the women of sub-Saharan Africa have something that a lot of women in the West do not have. The women in the West have cats, and they have good jobs, and the women of sub-Saharan Africa, they have a belief in the divine, and they have kids. And maybe there's a biological undercurrent that is keeping a lot of women from realizing their full potential. And so without reading your phone and just, like, you know, connecting.
I'm not really reading my phone.
Well, it's fine, for sure, then you can answer without it. Fair enough. Would you agree that it's a good thing that more women get married and have children in the West?
I would ask you, would you say that a sub-Saharan African woman who's experienced female genital mutilation and checks extremely happy in a survey, and I also would check extremely happy in a survey, who do you think would be objectively more happy, even if they both check the same answer?
No, okay, so I fully, if you want to talk about how Islam mistreats women, we could talk all day long. Like, I'm all for that.
Me too.
Okay, good, so we agree.
Yeah,
We actually agree.
many things.
And we should shut off Muslim immigration to the UK, right? We totally agree.
I think that all religious fundamentalism is bad, and if you take that logic, we should also not allow evangelical Christians into the debate either.
Hold on a second. Hold on. That's fine. Hold on. Can you show me what would your example, because I have 50, a single Christian country that you would say mistreats women, right?
America.
Oh, really?
Yes.
We had a female woman vice president. We had a female vice president, a female speaker of the House. Women earn more than men in America.
In Rwanda, female representation in government supersedes the UK by quite a lot. Do women get treated better in Rwanda?
Okay, I might be super off this. Like, is Rwanda Islamic? Like, I'm not totally sure. I don't think it is. Like, is it? Like, I don't know, actually. It's not. So, again, we were just talking about Islam as a little bit of a side note, but you must be morally clear, because you brought up female genital mutilation, which is a teaching of the Islamic faith. But as a side note, like, again, this is very important, which is, I'm not here to require you to do anything or not. I'm making a simple observation, which is objectively true regardless. The women of the West are miserable, and they're miserable for a reason, because we've told them to suppress how they are made by God and pursue something else and get a bunch of trinkets and get a bunch of promotions, and they end up at 38 years old with a big flat in London, and they're miserable. And we should tell them to stop freezing their eggs and start finding their partner earlier and have lots of babies.
Yeah, okay, I think I bring two just final points to this. First one is just really intuitive, right? Which is that if you actually care about women's happiness, then the solution is to structurally support them. That means universal childcare, shared legally enforceable parental leave, and in Nordic countries where women have high workforce participation and also some state support, they report higher life satisfaction than in more conservative countries, including America. So if your metric is happiness,
Just do satisfaction
equality
surveys. You just told me
matters.
they're BS.
So our satisfaction surveys bullshit or not? Because you told me
Do you acknowledge satisfaction surveys or not? You just told me that they're BS. Do you think they're objective? Are we going to use that as data?
I don't think that
Yes or no?
is the only sole data set, but it is a data set that
You told me they're so flawed and you self-report. Okay, by the macro self-satisfaction data, I am correct. And you are right. When you have paid family leave, you are happier. I'm actually a proponent of that. At Turning Point USA, we pay for 6 months when somebody has a child. I think there's a lot of agreement we can have on that. We need to encourage having more children. I think the Hungarian child policy is phenomenal. We should look at that because the greatest thing that is plaguing the West is we're not having enough kids. And it's not just bad because we won't have a future. It's also bad because the present is awfully miserable for too many women as well.
Okay, in which case I think we get...
Do I start bringing this to a close, please?
Okay, I think just one final thing, which is that in which case we get to a really interesting argument about what parts of womanhood can be demarcated to the social and what kinds of womanhood can be demarcated to biological. So for example, my anatomy is demarcated to the biological, but the fact that I might potentially be a better nurturer than a man, I would demarcate that to the social, you might demarcate that to the biological, in which case we have differing moral scales of value. I would ask why we should necessarily prioritize your moral scale of value, which prioritizes things like the birth rate, when in actual fact there are various other moral scales of value. And if you yourself are a free market American, why is it the case that you would not, like...
Okay, if there's one AI site builder you need to meet, it's this dope tech from Wix. Now this whole flow is a conversation, so your words actually build your website. I'm going for a store, and after a free-flowing conversation, I get this detailed site brief. And just like that, my first draft is ready. Now that's dope. Next, you can really get in there and style it your way. Here's the fun part. You can regenerate this whole thing over and over. Or you can tweak something specific, like your layout. Let me describe what I had in mind. Yeah, that's fire. If there was ever a time to speak life into your dreams, it's right now using the Wix AI website builder.
The previous speaker noted,
I've already answered.
extend personal freedoms towards all spheres, including a private sphere.
I believe in absolute truth claims, and it's absolutely wrong and bad when a society stops having kids to replace their own population. And then you have to import the third world and you become the third world. It's bad.
I disagree, but thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And the final question that we've got time for today is from Sammy McDonald from St John's College.
Good evening, Mr. Kirk. You've obviously devoted a lot of your life to electing and keeping in power Donald Trump, and you did so partly because you said Trump would put Americans first and take them out of foreign conflicts. Shall we see how that is going at the moment? Currently, Trump has just accepted a $400 million debt from Qatar, which we're assured is perfectly above board. Billions in arms are going to Saudi Arabia, which they're using to bomb and starve Yemeni children. Not sure how that's in the interest of the United States, but it might be in the interest of the $5.5 billion deal his failed sons are receiving. At the same time, this great president of peace has greenlit mass killings not just in Yemen, but in Gaza, where he greenlit an invasion called Operation Gideon's Chariot, with the express aim of wiping out the Gazan population. You promised to put America first. Haven't you and your ilk sold America out?
No.
Well, I'm glad you have great intellectual substance and can answer. Because it's all the culture wars for you, isn't it? The second someone actually tells you what you're doing,
Could you just, can you calm down a little bit? Like, just a little bit? Pounding the table, you're all over the place. No. You want me to go piece by piece? Or would you like me to talk slower?
I think you can...
Number one, Donald Trump is convening a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. Joe Biden gave them armaments.
Well, isn't it?
Can you not interrupt me? I allowed you to talk uninterrupted.
You're famous for not interrupting.
I haven't interrupted a single person here today. Can I speak uninterrupted, actually? Okay.
He is convening a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. I believe we will see an end to that war. Number two, he's actually talking to Iran and discouraging Israel to strike the interior of Iran, and has stopped many other international countries to do the same. Number three, can you give him credit for ending the Indian-Pakistan war?
Both of them said he didn't do that.
Well, hold on a second.
Let's go back.
No, that's important.
Russia, Ukraine.
Hold on, that's important.
Can I speak now?
Yes, but the Indian-Pakistan thing, you got to go deeper than that.
Let's go in order. Is a peace summit where the main person in question, Russia, doesn't show up, is that a success, Mr. Kirk?
Well, I'm not even sure.
Not a success?
Well, again, these are ongoing negotiations. And it's a lot better than when your Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, went alongside our Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, to Istanbul and unnecessarily blew up a potential Russian peace deal, which has resulted in hundreds of thousands of dead Ukrainians, one of the great unnecessary wars of the modern era. Donald Trump believes in conversation and police boot through strength. He has been president for well over 120 to 130 days, and he has already ended a war between two nuclear conflicts of India and Pakistan. He has secured our own U.S. southern border while we were being invaded by foreign powers. And thirdly, he is brokering a potential settlement with Iran that will prevent a major escalation in the Middle East. And finally, it is very difficult, but I believe they'll get it done, that will finally see an end to the Russian-Ukrainian war.
I'm just going to disregard the enormous lies you just put out there about Russia and Ukraine. But do you really think leverage negotiations work if you cut off all your leverage and scream at one party in the Oval Office? Don't you think that has just emboldened Russia? Because look at the approach. Putin thinks so much of your glorious president, he can't even be asked to show up. You have elected, or helped elect, somebody who is at best an idiot and at worst is deeply corrupt.
Okay, again, so Trump and Putin had a 2-hour phone call today. You'll acknowledge that's a good thing. The pursuit of peace can sometimes be a winding road, and it's a lot better than sending hundreds of billions of dollars further into the killing fields of eastern Ukraine, something that tragically both the UK government and the US government has been unnecessarily supporting for a couple of years. President Trump wants to see a brokerage, an ending of this settlement. I pray we can get it. It's very complicated because of the mess that Joe Biden left, which was an active kinetic war with a nuclear power sending American-made missiles into the interior of Russia. So President Trump has already ended a war. He's ended an invasion. He's only 130 days into this. And I believe, we do not know. At this point, we are merely speculating, which I think we should not spend our time doing that, because eventually one of us will be right. I believe we'll be right, and I believe we'll see an end to this war.
Can we just talk about 100 billions worth of weapons? Because you dodged my question on what was going on in the Middle East, where Trump has just signed enormous arms contracts with Saudi Arabia and with Qatar. And I noticed you ignored the fact that this might have had anything to do with the blatant corruption going on through the Trump coin and going on through giving the very competent sons of Donald Trump billions of investment from Saudi Arabia and Qatar. This is something that is directly embroiling Americans into conflict, but is importantly killing many innocent people. Those nations have been known to terrorize innocent civilian populations. So if you're coming to me and you're objecting to America selling weaponry, why are you defending shilling for the Saudis?
Ridge is known for quietly building out some seriously smart tech accessories, this iPhone 17 case included. This case is built specifically to match the iPhone 17 Air profile, an ultra-slim design that doesn't add bulk. It has touch-sensitive camera control built directly into the case, and best-in-class drop protection with a military-grade build. Not to mention MagSafe perfection. It snaps perfectly with Ridge's wallets and power banks. This case sports a clean, minimal design with no unnecessary texturing or branding. It's part of a full tech ecosystem and backed by Ridge's 99-day risk-free trial and lifetime warranty. If you're grabbing the iPhone 17 Air, or already have, it's worth pairing it with something that was built for it. Check out Ridge's full lineup at ridge.com. It's smart gear for a smartphone.
Well, hold on. One is sending weaponry, one is purchasing. Secondly, you do know that the biggest purchase that was announced was commercial airliners, 737, $100 billion. We've heard of Qatar Airways. They purchased $100 billion of commercial airways. You are right, there were some weapons contracts. But I guess the question is, would you rather have Saudi Arabia buy weapons from America or China?
I'd rather they not have American weaponry at cut price rates.
I disagree.
Let's talk about Qatar for a second.
Okay, fine.
You mentioned Qatar. You've been talking a lot about Hamas and the evils of Hamas. Can I ask you, who is the main funder of Hamas?
Well, the Palace State Well, again, the West actually funds Hamas.
Which state?
Well, Iran funds.
No.
Also,
where are the Hamas leaders?
And also Qatar funds Hamas. It is a combination of
Is this a state which
international
will have a
organizations.
400 million jet with the President of the United States on it?
Hold on. First of all, it was not given to him personally. I understand the optics of it, but it was not given to him personally. It was given to the U.S. government, and under that standard, no U.S. government should ever receive any gifts from any foreign countries whatsoever. It's not given to him personally, and not a violation of.
Why is he trying to transfer it to his personal library? He is
actually okay. Again, he sent out a statement. This is way too in the weeds. If you want to keep on going, we can.
It's a fundamental moral principle.
Okay, so under that fundamental moral principle, then, can you acknowledge, though, that President Trump is getting more done in a less period of time than any president we've seen, while our prior president did not even know what year he got elected? Do you understand the contrast here?
What aboutism again? I'm not a defender of Biden.
No, I'm not saying President Trump is far better.
You have to defend the person you spend millions.
I will defend every day of someone who ends an invasion.
That's all you do is
brings down the price of oil, who is revitalizing the American economy, who is brokering peace, who stopped the potential nuclear war, who is bringing Iran to the table and bringing Russia to the table. Someone who does not want armed conflicts with the greatest powers of our time. I will defend that endlessly.
Well, living
what are you
in a fantasy world of your own creation. So it's quite hard to engage
that, but then disprove
But
it.
let's check on how Trump is doing in terms of diplomacy. Look, with the war in the Middle East, do you think it was a defensible decision to tell the Israelis you wanted Trump Gaza to agree for Israel to invade the Gaza Strip and to continue to murder thousands of innocent children and civilians in a pointless war? Is that in America's interest? Is that in humanity's?
Well, first of all, you should know something about Trump. There's something, if you realize with Trump over the last 10 years, he is quite the social media user and uses hyperbolic language at times. But let me ask you, in the conflict of Israel versus Hamas, who's the good guy?
I believe both Hamas and the Israeli government are evil, but I think also that there is no justification.
Are they equally?
There is no justification for the murder and mutilation of thousands of innocent people and children.
But let's
futile. There is no justification, Mr. Kirk, for invading hospitals, for bombing innocent populations and dragging out a war which is damaging Israel and the West.
You've made that point, but
well, it's not a point, it's a moral truth, isn't it?
Yeah. It was also a moral truth that the war started because 1,300 Jews were killed and 200 were taken hostage. And when you declare war on Israel, expect a firestorm in reaction. Let me finish, I let you talk. Israel, at its holiest day of the calendar year besides Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, Samat Torah, the 50-year anniversary of the Six-Day War. On Shabbat, Hamas invaded Israel, deciding to go recklessly to music concerts, to homes, to kibbutzes, and taking 200 plus hostages. They knew what they were doing. In one of the most cloistered urban environments on the planet, 2 million people live in a place where it's impossible to wage war. Impossible. Where they wear civilian clothing, they violate every tenet of the Geneva Convention, and the IDF, when they do something right, they get no credit. When they do life-saving surgeries of a Gazan child, they get no credit. When they drop leaflets, they get no credit. But when they happen to bomb a place where they are operating their military from, which we now know from third-party verified sources, hundreds of Hamas military operations are in mosques, schools, and hospitals. I'm sorry, the country where they were living in relative peace on October 6th, that all of a sudden we had a war, and Hamas started the war. And I don't see people that were really upset about the 2 million Germans that were killed in World War II, civilians. A tragic truth of war is that civilians die. I don't like it, and you don't like it. And they brought it upon themselves. The only operation and entity to blame is the leadership of Hamas, not the Israeli government, for fighting this defensive war after they were invaded.
I will defend the terrible pogrom that was launched against Jews on that day. But the justification for the death of innocents cannot be an infinite cycle of bloodlust. It cannot be killing tens of thousands of innocent civilians with a war with no end in sight, people who were not complicit in those atrocities. It cannot be bombing hospitals which children use. It cannot be bombing hospitals in which cancer patients are dying and starving in there. The deaths that have been inflicted, nobody knows the true toll, but somewhere between 50 and 100,000 people lie dead under the rubble. And what is left for Gaza except for to continue to suffer under Hamas? Because it turns out Netanyahu's political strategy has not worked. It has entrenched Hamas within the territories. To be a Christian, I would have thought, Mr. Kirk, would never have involved suggesting that the price for an atrocity must be an infinite cycle of bloodlust, that innocent people and the young population must be killed to avenge some kind of providential quest. How can you call yourself a Christian? Well, you just did.
I want to make sure we get our moral clarity straight before we proceed. No one likes what's happening in Gaza. No one with a heart or a soul or a mind likes when kids die. But you must understand who started the conflict so that you can end it correctly. And until Hamas brokers an unconditional surrender, of which they are unwilling to do, they could release the hostages and drop their weapons and their lives would be spared. Instead, they are using children of Gaza as cannon fodder, financed by the Iranian mullahs and dragging the entire world into this conflict. So, I don't even know what we're debating at this point, other than I believe that Israel, I believe the facts, Israel was unconditionally attacked on October 7th. They're responding in kind. And I would just ask you a very simple moral question. How should Israel have responded?
Not with the blanket carpet bombing of the city, not with bombing hospitals. Of course, some kind of military operation might have been necessary, but not murder on this scale. There is no justification for what is happening with the enormous death toll that is being produced. I really cannot see how you come here and you have the gall to lecture us on Christian morality and then sit here and justify the murder of thousands of civilians. And is it working, Mr. Kirk? Is Hamas dismantled?
I've never said that.
You just did.
Well, no,
this is your whole
in war, these are called casualties of a war. Okay? Again, I'm not going to justify every military maneuver of a 100,000 person army. Instead, what I will do is I'll be clear that there is a good guy and there is a bad guy. I honestly...
Is that the morality of a child?
Well, instead, well, hold on. It's interesting you say that, because a child who knows that Israel is the good guy, Hamas is bad, has a lot more wisdom than a student like yourself at Cambridge University.
I will be glad I will not have been somebody who has defended the genocide of the Palestinian people. And I think you will have to reckon one day that you have reckoned.
Interesting. I want to put on this. So can you tell me what African country is currently ongoing a civil war?
Believe it or not, I know about Sudan because I'm an idiot.
How about what Southeast Asian country has an ethnic cleansing going on right now?
Myanmar.
Good. And you have strong opinions on both sides?
Unlike you, I take an effort to be informed about foreign policy and to come to conclusions. You are a culture warrior. I believe when everything is done, Mr. Kirk, people will see you and the people you supported as corrupt, as selling the country out to the lowest bidder, and of doing irreparable damage to a country I'm sure we all deep down love.
The difference,
you will have to reckon with that.
Difference, Mr. Kirk, is when... The difference is when we get our way, we'll still have a country, and your country will be a third world hellhole. Next question.
Thank you. That's all we've got time for today. Mr. Kirk has another engagement, so we're going to walk out of the chamber.
I'm fine with it if you want. Okay.
No, I think this is all we've got time for today.
You guys are easy.
Okay, we'll take a couple more. Does anyone have any questions?
Who's the best?
Over there.
Thank you. A very, very short question. Israel versus Hamas. Good guy versus bad guy. Russia versus Ukraine. Who's the good guy and who's the bad guy?
Both are bad, one is worse.
Oh, which way round?
Russia is worse than Ukraine.
Okay, so why haven't we pursued that?
What do you mean?
Well, it seems to me that in the whole of the current US proposition, that Ukraine is being the bad guy.
In what way? We funded Ukraine upwards to $200 billion.
Absolutely. But
we just signed a mineral deal with Ukraine, not Russia.
You are expecting Ukraine to give up 20% of its territory to someone who invaded it.
Well, is Crimea part of Russia or Ukraine?
Ukraine.
That's where we don't agree.
Well, I'm afraid that's part of international treaty. That's not up for grabs.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, that's the point. Even Zelensky has said he's willing to give up Ukraine.
America signed the agreement that gave Ukraine Crimea.
Right.
When the Soviet Union ended.
Right. It was done. First of all, it never should have been done. It was largely ceremonial. But however, it was annexed under Obama. Yes, and it was a mistake. And it should be given back to Russia as a sign of good gesture to end this conflict. But who's currently controlling Crimea? Where was the Russian Navy headquartered in World War II? Where was the end of World War II? This is very...
I'm not doubting that. I'm not doubting that. I'm just saying that if we're being logical on what has happened, that you are now arguing against that flow. And I don't understand it. Because actually, why is Ukraine the bad guy?
No, I said they're bad, they're not the bad guy.
Yeah, well, you said they were both bad, but one's more bad.
Correct, yes.
So why is Ukraine bad?
Well, there's a lot wrong with Ukraine. First of all, they're not a democracy. Zelensky refused to hold an election.
Well, no, he can't hold an election.
Oh, wait, did Churchill hold an election during the war?
Because under his constitution...
Hold on, Lincoln held an election during the war. That's not true. He can call an election. He can call a snap election. He's full dictator of the country.
No.
Because he knows that the people of Ukraine would kick him out immediately because he's deeply unpopular. In fact, if he wanted to show a statement to the world, he would call an election and win by 80% and say, see, I'm super popular. So that's number one. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with a person being propped up as a government we're sending $200 billion to that refuses even to face his voters.
Okay, I can't agree with you factually on that at all. I mean, constitutionally, Ukraine is not able to hold an election because it's under military law at the moment, and that's just a matter of fact.
And then he can, as a prime minister or president, he can do whatever he wants.
He can't. He can't sign an executive order and change the constitution. Okay. Neither can the American president either, so hopefully there's no...
He could even do a ceremonial election to see where he actually stands with the people.
I think we call those opinion polls.
Yes, and they're very negative.
Firmly ahead in the...
Again, but you would agree that a person that holds on to power without the election of the sovereign is pretty questionable?
No, not in those circumstances.
Okay, then we disagree.
No, okay, that's fine. But give me another reason why you...
They are the most corrupt country in Europe that never even met the most remote standards of joining NATO. Do not know where a lot of this money is going.
I don't disagree that there is a problem with corruption, but the most corrupt country in Europe, are you sure about that?
I'd have to double or triple think about that, but they're very corrupt.
Okay, so that's a little bit doubtful. It's not absolute.
Well, I mean, well,
would corruption? I mean, let's face it, we are talking about comparison with some of the states you're doing business with in the Gulf.
Oh, of course, but we're not giving them money, they're giving us money. That's the difference, right? Saudi Arabia.
It's fine.
Well, hold on a second.
It's morally acceptable to take money from corrupt people.
Well, hold on. First of all, as far as morally acceptable, you do what's best in the benefit of your country. And so, for example, we were allied with Russia during the Second World War, and I'm glad we were. And I would ask you,
don't forget,
how much money is too much money to send to Ukraine? We're at $200 billion right now.
I don't think you have to send any more money to Ukraine.
We agree.
I think you have to agree to support them as a free country and perhaps sell them weapons. Like you're very happy to sell weapons to less free countries. And I think Europe will pick up the slack, as we ought to. And I don't disagree with some of the comments about Europe not looking after its own security. I just don't get this approach, which was supposedly to end the war quickly, which now seems to be elongating it. And in doing so, throwing up a smokescreen of very variable facts, if they are facts at all, about how things occurred, which actually isn't helping things. And if people can't see that Putin is stalling,
I agree with you. I think he might be stalling.
And therefore, and I think even your president has acknowledged the fact that he thinks he might be stalling.
Correct. So we don't have a disagreement there.
No, we don't. No, we just have a disagreement about the efficacy of tactics, and we don't know. And I'm willing to say we could be wrong.
No. Oh, well,
of course you could be wrong in life. I mean,
we could all be wrong. But actually bringing that war to an end consistently actually isn't going very well. And I would just suggest to you that whatever tactics have been used are perhaps not the best. And they are certainly inconsistent with what's going on in the Middle East and how America has been treating parties in the Middle East. But I've had enough of your time.
No, that's a fair contention. Thank you very much.
Very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Can everyone please stay in their seats, please? Thank you.
I'm stoked about Roku in 2025. They just started focusing on the self-service ads manager. It used to be a managed service, or you have to go through one of the large agencies. So I'm very excited for this.
Jordan Peterson, you've said that men need to, quote, grow the hell up. Tell me why.
Well, because there's nothing uglier than an old infant. There's nothing good about it. People who don't grow up don't find the sort of meaning in their life that sustains them through difficult times, and they are certain to encounter difficult times. And they're left bitter and resentful and without purpose and adrift and hostile and resentful and vengeful and arrogant and deceitful and of no use to themselves and of no use to anyone else and no partner for a woman. And there's nothing in it that's good.
So you say, I mean, that sounds pretty bad. You're saying
It's
there's a
bad.
crisis of masculinity? I mean, what do you do about it?
You help people understand why it's necessary and important for them to grow up and adopt responsibility, why that isn't a shake your finger and get your act together sort of thing, why it's more like a delineation of the kind of destiny that makes life worth living. I've been telling young men, but it's not, I wasn't specifically aiming this message at young men to begin with. It just kind of turned out that way.
And it's mostly, you admit, it's mostly men listening. I mean,
It is.
90% of your audience is a man,
Well, it's
right?
about 80% on YouTube, YouTube is a male domain primarily. So it's hard to tell how much of it is because YouTube is male and how much of it is because of what I'm saying. But what I've been telling young men is that there's an actual reason why they need to grow up, which is that they have something to offer. You know, that people have within them this capacity to set the world straight, and that's necessary to manifest in the world, and that also doing so is where you find the meaning that sustains you in life.
So what's gone wrong then?
Oh God, all sorts of things have gone wrong. I don't think that young men hear words of encouragement. Some of them never in their entire lives, as far as I can tell. That's what they tell me. And the fact that the words that I've been speaking, the YouTube lectures that I've done and put online, for example, have had such a dramatic impact is an indication that young men are starving for this sort of message, because why in the world would they have to derive it from a lecture on YouTube? Now, they're not being taught that it's important to develop yourself.
But does it bother you that your audience is predominantly male? Isn't that a bit divisive?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's no more divisive than the fact that YouTube is primarily male and Tumblr is primarily female.
Isn't it?
Tumblr is primarily female.
But you're just saying that's the way it is.
Well, I'm not saying anything. It's just an observation that that's the way it is. There's plenty of women that are watching my lectures and coming to my talks and buying my books. It's just that the majority of them happen to be men.
What's in it for the women, though?
Well, what sort of partner do you want? Do you want an overgrown child? Or do you want someone to contend with that's going to help you? And
So
that
you're
you can
saying
rely on?
women have some sort of duty to sort of help fix the crisis of masculinity?
It depends on what they want. No, I mean, it's exactly how I laid it out. Women deeply want men who are competent and powerful. And I don't mean power in that they can exert tyrannical control over others. That's not power. That's just corruption. Power is competence. And why in the world would you not want a competent partner? Well, I know why, actually. You can't dominate a competent partner. So if you want domination...
Want to dominate, is that what you're saying?
No, I'd say women who have had their relationships their relationships with men impaired, and who are afraid of such relationships will settle for a weak partner because they can dominate them. But it's a suboptimal solution.
Do you think that's what a lot of women are doing?
I think there's a substantial minority of women who do that. And I think it's very bad for them. They're very unhappy. It's very bad for their partners, although the partners get the advantage of not having to take any responsibility.
But what gives you the right to say that? I mean, maybe that's how women want their relationships, those women. I mean, you're making these
Morning, evening, grace, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Welcome to Hour 3 of today's program. I've spent the first 2 hours talking about Charlie as an individual, a person that I knew well and have known since 2012 or 2013, when he was literally just getting started and talking to 10 high school students in a room. And there are lots of people who know Charlie a lot better than me. But there is only one person I think can put this in perspective for us, and it's Victor Davis Hanson. Victor, of course, classicist historian extraordinaire with Stanford. He is the author of so many wonderful books, including most recently, The End of Everything. And I have been listening to The End of Everything for about 3 weeks. And last night, as I flew from the West Coast to the East Coast, I listened again to the beginning and the end and a little bit about the Aztecs, because I was just trying to get my mind out of Charlie. Victor, welcome. Thank you for joining me. I do want to talk about The End of Everything, but I'd like to begin with your reflections on the significance of an assassination of a young political rising star.
Well, I don't like the word irreplaceable, but it applies to him. I can't think of anybody under the age of 40, either conservative or liberal, that had such a multiplicity of talent. He was an administrator. He created a huge, enormous organization from nothing. He was very instrumental in the 2024 victory of Trump by his massive voter registration of young people. If you look at the statistics compared to 2020 versus 2024, Trump in the key states made sizable gains in the youth vote. He could write, he had a podcast, he spoke very easily, extemporaneously. I don't know anybody in the world with 1 year of college who would wade in to debate at Oxford and Cambridge and do so well. So he was just an unusual person, and it's not going, I don't think anybody on the conservative side could ever approach that level of talent and effect and influence. So it's going to be, and I think that was the aim of the assassin grasped that.
We are going to find out more about the killer in the next days. I'm sure now that we have a picture and a gun, they will capture him unless he takes his own life. And I know what was written on the casings. I'm not going to speculate, but it's an assassination. And you and I, Victor, can remember Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King, George Wallace being shot, I think in the '72 election campaign, a couple of shots taken at President Ford, and then of course Butler. But this is one like Robert Kennedy's that worked on a younger figure in the political arena. What impact does it have on our country beyond sorrow?
Well, because Charles Kirk was both a political activist, but he was also in the media, in his podcast, his interviews, his columns. So we don't really see that too often in the United States. We see it in Europe and Latin America, Mexico, where groups will go after journalists or media prominent. I mean, we have people who have been killed that were journalists, but not that prominent. And so this is sort of, I don't know what you would call it, you crossing the Rubicon, because it's sending a message that there's everyone on the conservative side is fair game. And the reaction of some people on the left, at least the initial reaction, I don't know if they've subdued their emotions, but it shows that they're not unhappy. And we saw the same type of illness after Luigi Mangione, where he was considered a folk hero for killing Brian Thompson. And the same thing happened after Trump. The same things happened with threats to Elon Musk. So I think this is the beginning of something very dangerous, because I think people on the left, if this person turns out to be the left, will feel that this is a legitimate way to achieve political power that they lack right now. They don't have any political power in the House, the presidency, the top courts, and there are 30-70 on the major issues, and there's a radicalized element that allows this to happen. And I think also very quickly, if you continue to call the President of the United States a fascist, or Hitler, as we see, or New Republic puts a cover story where he looks like Hitler with a mustache, or you have your House Minority Leader come with a baseball bat, or you have kickboxing videos of House representatives are going to fight, and it's all fight in the streets and what you see at ICE, then that filters down to people, and it brings people out of the woodwork who otherwise would stay there. And I think we've created a climate where it's considered that some people on the left feel they're morally superior, they're intellectually superior, they're part of a stratum that is superior, and they feel that any means necessary are justified to their noble ends. And that's a very dangerous thing to do.
Victor, yesterday I spent an hour with Justice Amy Coney Barrett talking with her about her new book, Listening to the Law. And we did not talk about specifically the portion of her book that dealt with what justices have to deal with now. The Kavanaugh near assassination, the daily protests, the leaks from the court. We didn't talk about that. I'll talk with her about it when I interview her on air next week, and I'll play the tape of that. But it seems to me the new normal was her security detail was extensive. We were inside of the Dixon Library. You've been there at Yorba Linda. You know, very secure. She'd done the Reagan Library the night before, very secure. Do you think we're going to enter an era where people just don't do events in the open air anymore?
I don't know, but when you mentioned Supreme Court, and I was referencing mainstream politicians lowering the bar. Remember, Chuck Schumer got out in front of the court while it was in session at a throng of pro-life protesters, and then he yelled out by name Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and said they had reaped the wind and they were going to sow the whirlwind, and they were, quote, you're not going to know what's going to hit you. And then a few months later, we started to see this very scary phenomenon of people assembling at the homes of justices, and one was a potential assassin, as you know. He was talked out of it by his sister. So yeah, I think that justices in general, but when you look at the Scalise and you look at the two Jewish Americans that were killed in Washington, the attack on the Scalise and some of the Republican leadership, and the two against Trump, even Josh Shapiro's, that attack on his home, that person was a radical pro-Palestinian. I get a little bit irritated when everybody just says this is just a climate of violence. I'm not trying to excuse there are people on the right that have employed violence, but in this particular time, in this particular moment, it's mostly people on the left that justify it, and they tend to be unapologetic about it. They just come.
Well, we have in the law we have a phrase, excited exclamation, which is sometimes admitted into trial if you're making an utterance in the moment of excitement, it's considered probative. I saw the TMZ video yesterday. It's not dispositive for me, but it sounded like people were cheering. I read Blue Sky on the airplane for a couple of hours last night, and I'm amazed at how evil people are or how sick. So this brings me to the moment we're in. We've talked about President Obama ushering in a revolutionary period in American politics. Donald Trump being the counter-revolution, the attempt to start the counter-revolution through lawfare, the continuation of the counter-revolution. What's this? Is this what the Grokkai being murdered by, and they were tribunes of the people, Charlie was really a tribune of the people. Is that this?
Yeah, I think because we are in a counter-revolution and we're questioning everything, such as the transgendered idea that it's a normalized third sex, or the DEI that your superficial appearance is essential rather than incidental to who you are. The Green New Deal has lost traction. I think people on the left feel that top-down revolution that was not shared by the majority of the people is now in danger. And it's not just in danger, there's millions of jobs that are in danger, careers, reputations that are in danger, and they feel that they can eliminate key people in that counter-revolution, whether it's Donald Trump or Elon Musk or Charlie Kirk, and I think there will be other threats to other people. Even lowly people like myself, I mean, I live out in the country, but I had my home swatted where somebody said there was an armed intruder, and an armed sheriff showed up. There was nobody here, of course. I went to the local bank that I've known my entire life, and I found that my entire savings and checking had been hacked and completely drained. I asked if it had happened to anybody there in the bank. No. So, I think that all the people on the conservative side that are somewhat outspoken are going to be questioned, and I think it's going to continue. I really do, because I don't see people on the left, by and large, apologizing for it or saying that it was completely wrong. Even when the MSNBC analyst was fired, if you look at that exchange, Katie Tour, the host, really prompted his response, Matthew Dowd, because she was the one that, the first thing she said in the segment was that Charlie Kirk was a divisive person. It was a conditional sentence. If he was divisive, then you can fill in the blanks, and the blanks would be the obvious implication that he deserved what he got. And basically,
it's interesting about Katie. He's not divisive. He's an actor in politics. He would go onto campuses and engage with young people, and they would do prove me wrong moments that made for great videos, viral moments. He would give ground occasionally, and he always ended with a smile and a handshake. Charlie was actually joyful. I don't know that this won't darken a generation. Do you think it will?
Yeah, I think it's sort of a force multiplier. I mean, we're talking on 9/11, and then we had Irania Zaratustra, who was murdered, not just murdered, but in her death throes and bewilderment, facing death and eternity, the guy walks by dripping blood. And I listened to the video very carefully, and I could hear twice, maybe I'm mistaken, if so, correct me, that he said, "Got the white girl," twice. Then the three people across the aisle got up, watched her die, and didn't even lend a finger. And there it was all, then the mayor's reaction, and then the circumstances of why DeCarlos Brown were out. It was just overwhelmingly the worst. It was sort of the culmination of left-wing ideology and so many things. It reminded me of the less toxic but also lethal Palisades fire, just a train wreck of leftist ideologies all coming at once to destroy this poor girl's life. And then no one really saying publicly, why don't you cover this? Why are you suppressing this? Why are you suffocating this story? Why didn't these people help? What was going through his mind? Why was he out as a 14-year film? That type of thing. And then we have Charles Kirk, and it just, I think those events, and there was a murder in Auburn as well by a felon who shouldn't have been out. I think it's just overwhelming to people, and I think whatever's going on, enough is enough. And the best thing I think for Charlie, and I had just done Charlie's show in late August and had a long talk with him. You're absolutely right. And I had been out, to Phoenix and spent a couple of days with him. And in the past, he wasn't a divisive figure. He always wanted to encounter people and see if he could persuade them. And the statistics show in the 2024 election, they made sizable gains in the swing states because of those efforts, along with voter registration. But I think people they're kind of bewildered, but they do have an idea that enough is enough, and the best thing they could do is register in enormous numbers in November and do something historic and not lose the midterms as most presidents do after 2 years, win them by a decisive margin. That was something he was really interested in.
Let me ask you, Victor, about autodidacts. I met Charlie when he was 18 or 19, as I said. He didn't know a lot, but he had a lot of enthusiasm. And he would call and compliment me on Hillsdale Dialogue with Dr. Arnn. He couldn't get enough. Autodidacts are often driven to learn more and more and more, and he participated in all the Hillsdale courses. I'm sure he participated with you in that. And he was on a trajectory. I don't know if it was political or not. I don't know that he had ambition for himself. He certainly could have had any job in the White House that he wanted. The president liked him that much. He didn't want anything. He wanted to build his movement. But are autodidacts unique in your experience in terms of their hunger for knowledge?
Well, you know, in the field that classical philology and classics in general, it's ironic that you asked me that question, because three great achievements in the last 150 years were all autodidacts. We had Heinrich Schliemann, and of course he made the argument that it was a historic Troy and Mycenae. He was a German banker. And then we had Michael Ventris. He was an architect and had cryptology experience in World War II, and he proved that Linear B was Greek, and the Mycenaeans were not non-Greek speakers or Semitic people. They were Greeks. Everybody that were classics PhDs and formidable scholars had not been able to decipher it. And then in some ways there was Milman Parry had a degree in classics, but he was a maverick, and he went out and lived in Serbo-Croatia, and he proved that Homer did not write the Iliad or the Odyssey, that it was a product of oral composition which exists today in Serbia and the Balkans. So I've always been very sympathetic to autodidacts, but I will say this, may be controversial very quickly, I'm more sympathetic now than I was even 20 years ago or 30 years ago, because something's happened to the humanities in the university where the people who are trained are not trained well. In my field, they do not know Latin and Greek in the way that we were trained. They don't know classical scholarship. They're theorists. Theory in the humanities has become an excuse not to learn the discipline. So an English PhD will not know Milton, they will not know Shakespeare's play, they won't know Ben Jonson, they'll just read contemporary theory. They're not well educated. So I think the decline of the university, at least in the humanities, makes the autodidact in some ways more important than ever.
That's why I think the Hillsdale courses online matter so much to America, and millions of people are taking it. Victor, I want to transfer now from the tragedy of Charlie's death and the circumstances of what it says about the counter-revolution and the revolution to your book, The Rare Abrupt End of Civilizations. And by the way, it's fascinating. I don't know where you found the time to do this. I only knew about Carthage among your 4 case studies, and I didn't know much about the Third Punic War. I knew about the Second and the First, and I didn't know anything about Thebes. I knew Byzantium fell, but I didn't know how decrepit it had become and internally rotten. I didn't know anything about the Aztecs other than they were destroyed. And your argument is a final siege or invasion that leads to the catastrophic disappearance of a people and a culture is not only not rare, it occurs with a certain frequency. You mentioned as well the Cherokees, the Jewish, Yiddish community of Eastern Europe, that these things can collapse in a hurry. Now, I thought part of the message of your book was, America, wake up. Hypersonic missiles, enemies who are evil, the rapid deployment and distribution of hypersonic missiles, aircraft carriers being targeted, it could all change in one day, in the way that Israel kind of changed 2 years ago on 10/11, and we changed 24 years ago on 9/11. Do you think that events like the assassination of Charlie presaged that? Because we've had other political assassinations in my lifetime, Yitzhak Rabin in Israel, for example, and they didn't presage anything other than tragedy. How do those two fit together? The end of everything and then the end of an individual's life as an act of violence.
Well, I think we're at the end of everything of the status quo. I think everything is now on the table, and we have a strong element of people who believe that anything is justified by their noble and superior morality and intellectualism, and that's the left. And so I think that I'm afraid that we're going to see more and more of this. And as DEI starts to fade, there's billions of dollars and millions of people invested in it, and they're not going to go down without a fight. So yes, I'm worried about that. One of the commonalities of those four civilizations that were destroyed, not just destroyed, but as you point out, were eliminated in toto, is that they didn't think that that would happen. They didn't realize how dangerous the people were outside their walls. They didn't understand that people like Scipio Aemilianus or Alexander the Great or Mehmet II considered themselves intellectuals, men of letters. They didn't understand that men of letters or highly sophisticated people can be the most deadly. They didn't understand that you cannot count on outside forces like allies. The Carthaginians thought, well, the Macedonians will come to the rear of the Romans, or to the very day Constantinople fell, they kept saying, surely Western Christendom will come down the Hellespont at the last moment, the Dardanelles, and save us. That didn't. Thebes said, the Spartans are almost to the Corinthian Isthmus, they'll be here. That doesn't happen. So you have to be self-reliant, you have to be deterrent, but most importantly, you have to be empirical about what status you are in, what era your own society or civilization is. Is it financially stable? Does it have an adroit military? Does it have a workable, stable government? All of these things were lacking there. The worst thing was that it was very tragic writing that book, because when you look at what the Carthaginians did, they surrendered their arms, they trusted the Romans, they had no idea what the Romans were up to. They just couldn't conceive of it. And the same thing is true of Constantine, the last emperor. He had no idea what the ultimate Ottoman objective was. He thought he did, but he really didn't, and neither did the Thebans. And I think sometimes we feel that we're protected by our two oceans or our affluence or our traditions, and we're not. And in the epilogue, I pointed out the things that Mr. Erdogan is saying. He said he's going to send missiles into Athens. He's going to send missiles into Israel. He said that he has a solution for the Armenians that his grandfathers had. So I take him at his word. And I take the same thing everybody has discounted Putin and all of the oligarchs in the Russian media and said he'd never use a tactical nuclear weapon. He doesn't want to destroy people. I don't believe that necessarily. I think that we're very close to a NATO-Russian confrontation, as we saw with the drones recently.
Oh my goodness, as I was reading, again, the second time, because Victor and I were originally supposed to talk about the end of everything last week, and then circumstances intervened, so I got a chance to listen to it. And I wrote down some notes. Long unaddressed vulnerabilities. Well, that is us vis-a-vis the Chinese Communist Party and our open borders. Long unaddressed vulnerability. We let everyone in. Waning empires do not want to accept the fact that they are waning. Naivete, hubris, ignorance of or indifference to new military technologies, a retreat into fantasy, and especially gullibility and ignorance about their enemies. And I loved your line, Victor, the cargo of affluence and leisure mark these precipices on which civilizations dance. Well, if you wanted to describe, if we were playing a parlor game, people would say, I got it, it's America. That would be it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're $37 trillion in debt. Trump is trying to restore the military, but he doesn't have the financial wherewithal really to do it yet. We were down 50,000 recruits. They made an amazing effort to get the ranks back to normal size, but we're running a $1.1 trillion deficit. We're trade deficit. Probably, he inherited a 1.9 budget deficit. And we have an open border with 10 to 12 million people came across. We have 60, 70,000 people until recently were dying a year from fentanyl. And these things were not being addressed. And more importantly, I think, is the attitude of the people. We've got to a credo that says it was a moral thing to let in millions of people and break federal law, but if you dare try to follow the law and return them to their points of origin, then that's amoral. Moral to let them in and break the law and endanger the security of the United States, but amoral to try to correct that and follow the law. And that's where we are.
We're also at a place where 50,000 military-age males from the People's Republic of China crossed the southern border. 50,000. That is so stunning that people are not alarmed by that. And you mentioned what happened to you at your bank. You know, we have a sponsor, Webroot. I'm telling everyone, you just can't live on the internet unprotected anymore. And it's not because of kids in their basement in their underwear. It's because of rogue criminal cartels in Eastern Europe, the Chicoms, the Russians, the Iranians. Everyone is trying to do this. But our blissful indifference, Victor, you're neither, people mistake you for being a pessimist. You're not a pessimist. You're something of a scientist of facts. Where do the facts lead here?
Well, the saving grace of the United States, it's Westerners in general, as Churchill said of democracies, they always do the right thing last. It's a very self-critical and self-healing society. And we saw that, I mean, if we had this conversation 2 years ago, you and I said, or you said to me, don't worry, Victor, 6 months into 2025, the border will be closed. There will basically be no illegal immigration, and that 40 to 50,000 soldiers that they're missing in the Pentagon, and they say due to drugs or obesity or gang, that's going to be limited. And Iran is not going to have a deliverable nuclear weapon for at least a few years. I would have thought you were crazy. And yet we did that very quickly. And whatever people say about Donald Trump's language sometimes, he has done, I can't think of another Republican of any stripe who would be able to endure the level of hostility and still be able to stage this counter-revolution. I've never seen anything like it. It's everything from DEI to architecture to iconoclasm, every aspect of our culture, our social structure, our economics, our military, he's trying to address in 4 years. And he's been, for all of the criticism, he's been very successful. So we can change, because most of the four horsemen, so to speak, of the Western apocalypse that we in Europe suffer, and we know that it's, as you said, open borders, it's fertility 1.4 in Europe, 1.6 here, it's DEI, and it's this crazy war on fossil fuels and trying to really destroy us by unreliable and costly wind and solar and other mandates. Those are all self-inflicted, every one of those, and they can be addressed by simply changing the policy and unleashing the value and the strength of Western civilization, empiricism, meritocracy, rationalism, Judeo-Christian tradition. All of that is still there. We just need to reignite it. And societies are not linear, they're circular. So we can recover if we have the will.
Matt Continetti wrote in the Free Press today, and I think Matt is one of the brilliant young minds of the rising generation. Who will save us from this free fall? I'm paraphrasing the title. And I thought to myself when I read it, well, there's J.D. Vance, there's Marco Rubio, there's Tom Cotton, there's Ted Cruz, there's Elise Stefanik. There are a bunch of hard-nosed, serious people coming up, especially the vice president speaks passionately and from the heart. And I know the left hates all those people, hates them. But do you think the left might crumble? Solzhenitsyn said in The Oak and the Calf, what if it's all paper mache, referring to the Soviet Union? Turned out it was. You could poke a stick through it. That was his phrase. What if the left is all paper mache and Mamdani and all these other people are slogan piled on slogans that don't work outside of blue jurisdiction, deep blue jurisdiction? And Gavin Newsom would get crushed by Rubio or Vance or Cotton, whoever we nominate. I really do have hope that the new generation, much younger than you and me, are very, very hard-nosed. What do you think?
What does feel a lot more finished is the Opera browser. Like, it has a music player built into the sidebar, and it is perfect. Because it means you're not fumbling around your tabs like, where the hell is this music playing from? I've just set mine to be always here because the browser is so modular. Link below to download the Opera browser for free.
I agree entirely with you. Conservative traditionalism is winning the younger generation, but the blue ideology, we know it doesn't work. It doesn't allow people to get married and have children and buy a home. It doesn't make them safe, and people know that. We're getting 4 or 5 million people who are self-selecting a year, fleeing these blue states like my own and yours. And in addition to that, you look at the fertility rate in red states, it's almost 2. And the top 10 states as far as fertility at 2, 1.9 are all red, and the bottom ones at 1.2, 1.3 are all blue. So that ideology is nihilistic, it's suicidal, it's inert, it's ossified, and it's not a dynamic. It's let's keep dividing the pie, never enlarge it. Let's just keep arguing. It's pre-civilizational racial tribalism. It's radical secularism, atheism. There's nothing in it that's dynamic. And once they gave up the old liberal democratic alternative to conservatism, which was I wasn't an adherent, but I admired many people on that side. That's gone, and they have become nihilistic. And I don't think it's a death cult; it's a suicidal cult. So I don't think.
Last question. Charlie was very outspokenly evangelical, and more so as the years went on. Now, I'm a Roman Catholic Presbyterian, so I can speak both Catholic and Protestant. Charlie spoke evangelical, but with a great deal of sympathy for and encouragement of young people who had rediscovered faith in God. Do you see that as the binary here? Those who have a belief in an ultimate purpose better than themselves, that are based in the Creator, like the Declaration of Independence, versus the left, which is based, I don't know, whatever Marx believed in, nothing, actually, nihilism. Do you see the ascendant faith as being...
I do. I think people are embracing religion and transcendence in the Christian sense, and when they look at the people who are not, and they see what they're doing in that emptiness of their soul and mind, they're captives of their appetite. So they have all this emphasis on the internet and selfies and high cuisine and the latest kitchen and the latest neat place to go, and it's all empty. And I think young people are saying to themselves, I don't want to just live anywhere, I want to live somewhere. I want to identify with some place and some people. I want to know my grandparents. I want them to know my children. I want to go back to where my parents described, and because this world is a cruel world, and part of it is an atheistic world that believes that the only existence is here. There is no soul, and you better cash in while you can and satisfy those appetites. And it leads to what we've just seen with Charlie and on the train in Charlotte and elsewhere. And I think young people are to be commended, because every time I meet them, it just happenstance in the university classroom or at the airport, I'm always impressed. I really am. Much more so than
your last 2 books. Your last 2 books, The Dying Citizen and The End of Everything. Must reading for everyone. Are you done writing, Victor, or are you still at it, and what's next? Because that's kind of 2 parts of a trilogy. The Dying Citizen and The End of Everything. What's the 3rd book?
Well, I just finished a 130,000 word, it was called The Fall and Rise of Donald Trump. And I was interested not just a pro-Trump book. I was wondering how somebody who had come from the depths, and I tried to historically suggest he had been in worse shape after January 6th than any major political figure in the past who attempted to come back. How he came back, what they did to him, how he was able to survive, and the last 2 chapters, because everything changes every day, or what is this counter-revolution and will it work? And that should come out by Basic Books, I think in March. I've had a few health issues, so I'm kind of cutting back, but that book, I just finished it, so I'm waiting for the general edits, and it should be here in March from Basic Books.
And can't get here soon enough. Victor Davis Hanson, your podcast is indispensable, both those with Jack and those with your young friend, that woman whose name I can't recall.
Sammy
offhand.
Link, yeah.
Yeah, Sammy, she's fabulous, and they're fabulous podcasts. More the better. Thank you for spending a half hour with me today to salute Charlie and describe the end of everything and how we can avoid that. Victor Davis Hanson, always a pleasure and a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you for our quarter-century friendship, you.
We've learned a lot today about the shooting at Evergreen High School yesterday, about the shooter and his motivation, about one of his young victims, and about the school resource officer who wasn't there that day. And we have also learned about what we can do together to support the Evergreen community and youth mental health more broadly in Jefferson County. 18-year-old Matthew Silverstone is one of the 2 students shot by a classmate this week. Matthew's family shared this photo with a brief statement and appreciation of the community support and asking for privacy as they focus on his recovery. We don't know if Matthew is the victim in the critical condition or the victim with non-life-threatening injuries. Investigators are identifying the shooter, who ultimately died by suicide, as 16-year-old Desmond Holly. Sheriff's office says their investigation suggests that he was radicalized by what they called a quote-unquote extremist network, and that it appeared he was on a mission to kill classmates. They described him shooting his handgun several places around the school, reloading multiple times. One of the victims turned up at a rec center just south of campus. The other victim was found on the far northeast side of school property, where investigators say the shooter then turned the gun on himself. Students had run in every direction to hide at the rec center, at the library, at homes nearby. Today, investigators praised the school's quick lockdown for saving lives by blocking the shooter's access to various areas where students were sheltering.
We know that the suspect had a handgun. He had to keep reloading. He would fire and reload, fire and reload, fire and reload. This went on and on. And as he did that, he tried to find new targets. And he came up against a roadblock on many of those doors. He couldn't get to those kids.
Jefferson County Sheriff's Office says their officers were on the scene within 2 minutes of the first calls for help. That response did not include the school's resource officer. Today, we learned that the SRO usually assigned to Evergreen High is currently on medical leave. The night before the shooting, there was a PTA meeting where parents expressed concern about the lack of a full-time SRO. Our Mark Salinger joins us after speaking with the parent who led that meeting. Mark?
Yeah, Kyle, it's crucial to note that we don't know if having an SRO here at Evergreen High School could have prevented what happened here on Wednesday. But today, like you mentioned, we found out that SROs are shared amongst schools here in Jefferson County and here in areas like Evergreen. And at Evergreen High School, the night before this shooting, there was a meeting here discussing just that topic.
I woke up this morning and was like, when I was opening my eyes, please let this just have been a nightmare.
As Cindy Majeka comes to terms with what happened at her daughter's school this week, she thinks back to the Parent-Teacher-Student Association meeting on Tuesday night.
A mom sitting next to me said directly to Dr. Artis, why does Evergreen High School not have an SRO? Then another parent asked, what if there's a shooting?
Cindy is the PTSA president at Evergreen High School. The meeting minutes published on the PTSA's website show the school principal responded to the parents' questions about SROs. Principal Artis said the mountain schools have been deprioritized and resources are shared. She said we were deprioritized because we were a small mountain town with less crime than the schools down the hill with SROs.
I don't think a lot of parents know about this. Even as a PTA president, I didn't know about this.
We reached out to Jeffco Public Schools asking about the SRO policy for mountain schools, but did not hear back. On Thursday, the Sheriff's Office provided some clarity.
Evergreen High School used to have a full-time SRO. That SRO is on medical leave right now. So it's a shared duty.
The Sheriff's Office says the SRO stationed at the school earlier that morning rotates between other schools. A couple hours before the shooting, they were dispatched to help with a car crash nearby.
The SRO that was sharing responsibility of Evergreen High School is allowed to come and go. He can go to lunch. He might have to handle something in the parking lot, and he might be covering something that's happening in the neighborhood.
Sheriff's deputies and first responders say they arrived at the school within 2 minutes of the first 911 calls, and located the shooter within 5 minutes of the dispatch. We have no idea if having a school resource officer at the school on Wednesday would have prevented what happened.
The people that were at the meeting were texting me, we just talked about this last night. We just did. And it was eerie and almost as if, did we jinx this?
A meeting where the worst case scenario was brought up the night before it became a reality.
We still will ask to protect our students. It doesn't matter if you live down the hill or up here. Everybody needs to be protected. All of our kids need to be protected.
Hi, it's Haley Williams. Check out the music video for my song Glum on YouTube and YouTube Shorts, directed by my friends AJ Gibney and Zach Farrow.
According to those meeting minutes from the PTSA website, it shows that the principal here at Evergreen High School recommended that the PTA members go to the Jeffco Board of Education and advocate for a full-time SRO at the next Board of Education meeting. The PTSA president, Cindy, there tells me that they still plan to do that, Kyle.
And Mark, as you alluded to right off the top, I mean, we should just come right out and say that in Colorado's sad history of school shootings, we have seen instances where SROs were crucial in stopping shooters. We have seen other instances in which it honestly did not matter at all because it happened so quickly or it happens at another part of a large campus. But it all does fall into how families feel safe around schools. Mark Salinger, thank you so much. So our first thoughts after these school shootings are always with the students and their families, the teacher and the staff. Can't forget the first responders. In this case, they rushed toward danger to save lives, only to then witness the shooter, a young person himself, taking his own life. Our Angela McCall spoke with an organization looking to help people heal after crisis.
After the Evergreen school shooting Wednesday, the people who have been through this before wanted to help.
A lot of times when things like this happen in a school or a district, you don't know what you don't know. So until you've been through it. Knowing that we've been through it, we can help with those pieces.
Shauna Fritzler with the DeAngelis Center Foundation knew she had to do something.
We're going to jump in and help with whatever's asked of us as we can.
For the nonprofit, it meant implementing crisis counseling for those impacted by the school shooting in Evergreen.
It has become very, very difficult. So in the last few years, the economy is in a strange place right now. Donations are certainly not coming as regularly as they were in the past.
She quickly crowdsourced for funds, knowing first responders and others need that help right now.
You know, think about those first responders who saw things that they shouldn't have seen. So, and those children who saw things that they shouldn't have seen. And that should be our primary focus.
You don't know why you're put in this position, but if I can help, I'll do whatever I can.
The nonprofit is named after the former principal from Columbine High School, Frank DeAngelis. 26 years later, another school shooting in the same district.
It just brings back a lot, you know, we're all part of it. And, you know, Evergreen, I can't tell you how many times I heard yesterday, this wonderful this community, you would not think it would happen. And takes me back. If you would have told me at Columbine could have happened at Columbine, 26 years ago, I would have said, no, it couldn't. And unfortunately, it continues to happen, but we got to make it stop.
He'll help in the ways he can with another community, grieving with students and staff. The DeAngelis Foundation Center will do the same.
Needs in the community, we've had so many incidents, unfortunately, in Jeffco. The needs will continue for some time, years down the road.
Shauna says that it has been harder to get grants, not only for their nonprofit, but many others with changes in funding, federal programs, and so forth. Kyle.
Just so grateful that they're there, that they are a resource. Angeline, thank you very much. As soon as it was clear what happened at Evergreen High School, I heard from a number of you asking how you could help, specifically where you might donate to be of assistance to the community. And to be honest with you, it's not yet clear what the Evergreen community's needs are going to be. But there is a way for us to support both Evergreen in the short term and to support youth mental health in Jefferson County with any additional dollars that we might raise. That's why this week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign supports the Jefferson Center for Mental Health. Their clinicians and staff are in Evergreen today, spread out at locations across the community for anybody who needs to talk. And they will be there in the coming days as Evergreen sorts out what the community wants and needs in terms of support and care, short, medium, long term. The Jefferson Center will use our donations to support their work in Evergreen, as well as their work supporting the mental health of children across Jefferson County. They offer various types of therapy to help kids tackle their anxiety and depression. They work in schools on counseling and crisis response, and their trauma systems therapy team helps young people heal after tragedy. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word thanks to 303-871-1491 to get that link to donate. Your 5 years of microgiving raising $16 million for Colorado proves how $5 donations add up. You know I never ask you to give a loan. I'll match the first 50 donations of $5 to get us rolling. Nearly 6,000 of you have signed up to make a monthly donation to the Word of Thanks Fund. You put in your info once, and each month your donations automatically split among all the nonprofits we feature, so you help everybody. That's added an additional $35,000 to recent weekly microgiving campaigns. When we return, the latest on the search for Charlie Kirk's killer, and I will have a word about free speech and violence in America. And a reminder of the power of kindness to change the lives of our neighbors. That's next. "24 years ago today, America witnessed horrific terrorism, and America came together in a way that frankly I'm not certain that we would if we were faced with the same today. Each year on 9/11, groups in Denver organize events honoring and remembering the nearly 3,000 people who lost their lives in the terrorist attacks. One of those gatherings is the Memorial Stair Climb at Red Rocks. Coloradans remember and pay tribute by climbing the equivalent of the 110 stories of the World Trade Center. The climb each year raises money for the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation.
Well, we've had isolated rain showers all across the state of Colorado today, and that'll stay in the forecast. You can see this flow of moisture just flowing up from the southwest, and this will be fairly continuous for about the next